into this mess, but more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Monday, the 7th of August. The first set of asylum seekers to be housed on the Bibby Stockholm barge could arrive in the coming days.
Critics have dubbed the vessel a death trap, whilst other residents in Portland have expressed anger over the impact it will have on their local community.
Elsewhere, the Home Secretary has announced plans to clamp down on landlords and businesses who take on illegal migrants. But do we have the police resources to follow through with the proposals?
And a pub landlord has accused animal rights group PETA of wokery after they demanded he change the name of his boozer from the Old Bulldog to the Old Mutt due to health concerns surrounding the breed of the dog.
In sport, Arsenal claim the first silverware of the season by beating Manchester City at Wembley on penalties to win the Community Shield. And in rugby, Steve Borthwick names his England squad for next month's World Cup.
Thanks, Aidan, and we'll be rooting for the Lionesses as they take on Nigeria.
And, of course, we'll bring you your all-important latest weather forecast.
The weekend saw plenty of wet and windy weather, but what does the weather have in store as we start the new week? Join me later for a full forecast with all the details.
Top of the morning, I'm Martin Daubney.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
OK, so we'd like to start the show with a bit of a smile, and this is a corker. The front of the Sun, hands off. It's about sunbed wars breaking out across the Med. This followed from Der Bild, which is the German paper magazine, doing a sting saying that the British were being unruly across the Med, stealing sunbeds, towel wars breaking out, and then a classic piece of tabloid warfare. The Sun have done a counter sting. They went to Malaga and they said, actually, it's the Germans nicking all the sunbeds. And they even said here, one dad claimed victory. It's like the war. See, Ellie, here we go again. Sunbeds is bringing out the Blitz spirit.
Honestly. Yeah, do you know what? When I have been on holiday to these sorts of hotels where you do have to kind of fight for a lounger, the Germans are so good at it. Well, they're efficient, aren't they? They get up early, they head on down. No fuss.
Efficient is the word, but it is something that I do. I get very, very territorial about sunbeds.
Do you?
I deploy my kids. I send them down before breakfast. I said, right, that one, yep, there, yep, that one.
Aww.
A magazine, a book that you don't mind being stolen, take it. And my tip is the second row, because the first row by the pool, you get splashed.
Okay.
Chaos if you try to have an afternoon siesta.
Oh.
Second row, in the sun, with a parasol. It's clinical, it's tactical, it's a military warfare.
That's what you want. And how old are your kids?
They're 9 and 14.
9 and 14. And how long have you been making them work for the sunbeds?
Since they could walk.
Wow. OK. And what time are you sending them down to get the sunbed?
7 a.m. I think is fair. Before that's a bit too keen.
Poor children, they're on holiday and you're sending them down to nab you a...
No, but they wake early. That's their penalty. I don't want to wake up at 7 a.m. on holiday. I want a bit of a lie-in after a few cervezas.
And do they like it? Do they like nabbing the sunbed?
They see it as something they have to do
to
get their breakfast. I'm like Fagin.
Send the kids out to work in the morning. But do let us know, have you been on holiday so far this summer? If so, who are the ones pinching the sunbeds? Who's good at it? Is it the Brits? Is it the Germans? Perhaps it's somebody else entirely. But it is very, very stressful trying to get a sunbed on holiday. Do get in touch with us, gbviews@gbnews.com.
OK, to our top story now. The first group of migrants are expected to be housed on the Bibby Stockholm barge in the coming days, despite opposition from local groups.
Yes, the barge, set to accommodate 500 male asylum seekers, arrived at Portland Harbour last month after being tugged from Falmouth.
Joining us now is a No to the Barge campaigner, Dr. Susan Phoenix. Good morning to you, Susan. So I know you guys have been battling away peacefully and respectfully now for a long time. So how do you feel that here we are? This is the week, it seems, when the first residents are about to come. How does that make you feel as a local?
I think everyone is still very frustrated about the whole situation, because there's no doubt this place is not a safe environment for the barge. It just isn't right. So we're very, very worried, and we do feel it's being rushed, cart before horse. The infrastructure hasn't been prepared. The support services haven't been prepared. There are no resources, and money is just being thrown around from top to bottom from the government. We feel cheated, and we feel sorry for the people coming to stay on the barge, but we also feel very sorry for the local residents. It just has been, well, it's just been a mess from top to finish, you know?
So when you talk about infrastructure not being there, the resources not being there to cope, what would you like to see in place?
Well, ideally, we'd like to see the whole barge towed away and the port to say, gosh, we did make a mistake. We realise we don't have the resources. One problem after another keeps coming up. We now have the problem of the fire, and the fact the arrogance of the government has come out yet again. They haven't taken the advice of the local fire services and the fire brigade union. They've just said, oh, don't worry, it'll be fine. Now, we've heard this before, haven't we, in so many things in our country. It'll be fine. And we know it will not. We're worried now, not just about the guests I'm calling people guests on the boat, on the barge, but about our fire services, our ambulance services. If you look at the structure of that barge, I'm not an expert, and you wouldn't need to be to look. It's very, very long. And if you happen to be on that back wing, I have no idea how you would get out in a fire. And when people say, oh, but it's been used before by workers, it's not relevant because these people are not workers. They're not a disciplined coherent bunch because the languages are all going to be different. How are we going to get all of those people off? And how are we also going to get the ambulances and the fire services onto our island? The thing that keeps getting forgotten is we are one road on, one very narrow road on and off. If you look at the map and you look at a beautiful photo in our pictures of Portland this morning, a tiny road really with a bridge linking us to the mainland. So if we have one accident, the whole place is fouled up. Ambulances aren't getting through, fire engines aren't getting through, and that's for the locals as well as anyone coming into that port.
Susan, the irony of this campaign is that the so-called anti-racist, the refugees welcome crowd also don't want the barge in Portland, do they? They say, quite correctly, that it will overwhelm the local National Health Service, 500 military-aged men being dumped on a community of 12,000. Yet here we are once again, it's NIMBYism, it's no illegals in my backyard for them, but they want to dump it on your community. Do you feel like you're just being completely abandoned by central government, by all the politicians in the UK?
Yes. I mean, we're talking about the people power and reclaiming our voices, but we were never given a voice in the first place. It's devious underhand dealings between the Home Office and Portland Port owners. The Reeves and Langhams families have treated us like the serfs of medieval days. We keep saying that. We met the owner of the CEO of the port just recently, who refused to even speak or acknowledge a group of 6 residents just having coffee in the local coffee shop to say, can you help us? Will you have a little meeting? What can we do? And he literally just did that. Goodbye. Now, that says it all. So how can anyone care for the residents on the island or the barge with that kind of attitude? Plus, I think what really annoys all the groups, a lot of money is being made right through from the start. I made a chart the other day. I'm sorry it's not presentable, but it looks at all the companies involved, right down from Sunak and Braverman, the Home Office, the port, the families involved. Then we go down, they're going to pay for private health for the people on the barge. We can't see a doctor sometimes up to 8 weeks here. And then we have the foreign companies involved. We have the Australians, the Americans, all being given services. And so when we have absolute waffle coming out of our port owners saying, oh, it's going to help the resources of the local area. No, it's going to deplete. And when we have the local health officers saying, it won't impinge on your services, we say, but it will, because we don't have any services. That money could have been put into helping our services first. It's like me inviting you to dinner and forgetting to get the food in and forget to tell you how to get here. It's as simple as that. No planning, no common sense. What has happened to our government agencies? No common sense.
And in terms of the area in which you live, Susan, I mean, Portland, it's a beauty spot, isn't it? It's where many cruise liners pull in from around the world. I know there's been local conversation, fear, perhaps, that will impact on businesses and the hotels and the local economy.
Absolutely. Because we're very close to Bournemouth, just along the coast here, and the people from there have already found their tourist industry being impinged upon. The police are not, they're being discouraged, I'm going to say that, from reporting any crimes locally so as it doesn't look as if it might be someone that from outside. All of that kind of stuff. There's a lack of honesty. So it will impinge. We need to know we have security, and we don't feel we have enough. They've given us, with these massive amounts of money, 2 PCSOs and some extra security cameras for a summer holiday input of all of these people. It's just not sufficient. It's really quite frightening.
And Susan, one of the narratives put out by those who are against it on the refugees' welcome side is that this would be some sort of floating prison. It's not that at all. Can you make it clear to GBNews viewers that actually the 500 men on board will be free to come ashore and go back as they see fit?
Well, they will up until a point, but that group do have a point because they will have to be escorted off the port of Portland. So they will be behind locked gates when they're in there because the port has such a high security level. Actually, the port are getting rather silly I think they think they're operating a top security military base because they've sent out letters. They have sent out letters to all their workers recently saying, please don't take photos. Well, they haven't said please. They've said, do not take photos. Do not discuss what you're seeing here, or there will be other, you will be dealt with in a suitable manner. Now, this is getting a little bit big brotherish, if not the old-fashioned Russia, isn't it? It's really worrying people. Why is all this secrecy going on? Why do they think, and how are they going to govern the cruise liners? When the cruise liners come in, first people do is take a photo of the port they arrive in. So are they going to put these letters on all the cruise liners? It's just, I don't understand why it's so farcically inadequate and poor planning.
Okay, Dr. Susan Phoenix of the Just Say No to the Barge campaign in Portland. Thank you for joining us this morning on GB News Breakfast. Thank you.
Thank you.
And really good to actually hear from someone who is there, who's in the local community and can explain the concerns across the board.
It's an extraordinary state of affairs. When you speak to residents like that, who, don't forget, have been lambasted as being racist and fascist even, and they're just very, very concerned, justifiably so, about the impact on a very small community of 12,500 men being dumped on them. And isn't it ironic, Ali, how nobody wants them there? The people who...
On both sides.
Yeah, on both sides of the debate. So here we have a solution to a problem that shouldn't be there in the first place. Big questions need to be asked of central government on this one.
I mean, as you say, both sides in that debate say that the barge isn't fit for purpose. What is the answer? Do let us know. Do get in touch if you think you have it. gbviews@gbnews.com. We do love to hear from you.
We do.
Now, fines are set to triple for employees and landlords who knowingly support illegal immigrants. That's under new rules announced by the Home Office.
Yeah, with the biggest shake-up of civil penalties since 2014, the government hopes to target significant pull factors and overhaul Britain's reputation for being soft.
Well, we're joined now in the studio by the Conservative councillor for Epping and Thaydon in Essex, Holly Whitbread. Really good to see you, Holly. It always is. So give us a sense of things on the ground here. So this is trying to tackle landlords who rent out their properties and allow illegal migrants to work in this country. Is this something that you're seeing happening on the ground?
I mean, first of all, this is really good news. I mean, it's good to see illegal immigration and those who are facilitating illegal immigration being tackled, so I welcome that. This is something you do hear and hear about, and actually, when we hear those concerns and the issues we're having, particularly, we just heard the lady there, and I really sympathise with her position. It's important that actually when these people are coming into our country, they go through a proper process and we don't have people taking advantage and putting even further pressure on our infrastructure.
Yeah, in terms of the detail of this scheme, so penalties are being tripled. So the maximum fine is now £45,000 for an illegal worker, up from 15 grand, £60,000 for repeat breaches. For landlords, it could be £1,000 for the first breach, up to 5 grand for repeated breaches. So on the face of it, this is getting tough. Great. Here's a question for you. The biggest landlord of asylum seekers in Britain is the government, Serco. What are they going to do? Find themselves?
Well, first of all, the idea of this is to put people out of business when they're doing this. So for the smaller individuals, whether that be small landlords or different businesses, and there are numerous different businesses who sometimes do take advantage of these workers. And to be clear, when someone's an illegal immigrant seeking asylum, they shouldn't be able to work anyway. That's part of the process. But in terms of the government and how they're dealing with illegal immigration, actually, and while I have huge concerns for the lady who just spoke and the issues on the ground, they're now moving away from that hotel model and trying to process people as quickly as possible. And we have seen, and although the problem is reoccurring, we've seen a decrease, particularly in people coming over from Albania, and the processing they're getting on top of that backlog, which is good news. Obviously, there's still a huge way to go, but the fact that we're seeing that move away from the hotel, which was actually a higher cost to the taxpayer, and I've seen that in my local area, I think that is a positive movement.
I think many people will listen to this and think that, well, this is great. It's going to act as a deterrent. It's going to stop people wanting to come and work here and live here illegally. But, of course, the next question is, how can this actually be enforced? Do we have the police infrastructure to actually enforce this. I mean, we can't even stop shoplifting. We had an executive of the Co-op on the programme the other day who was saying there's 1,000 incidents in his stores every single day, and the police can't even come out to shoplifting.
I agree. I mean, I see locally the pressures that the police have, but I think where the government have been clear is this is a priority. Rishi, every time you see him on the TV listing these 5 priorities, stopping the boats and stopping illegal immigration is absolutely his priority. And actually, this is all part of making the UK an environment which people don't think they can take advantage of. So they don't think they'll just be able to come here and work illegally or move into a hotel. So this is all part of that process. So while policing resources are finite and always challenged, I believe the government will make this a priority to actually stop the people who are exploiting those who are trying to come into this country.
It's a fantastic point, Ali, and in fact later on we've got Sarah Dines MP on the show. That's a great point to put to her. You must have some idea of a beefed up immigration task force to enforce this. It's OK having fines in place, but how will they be implemented? But Holly, moving on, front page of today's papers are completely dominated by illegal immigration. Talk of the Ascension Islands being used instead of Rwanda on the front of the Daily Mail. Yesterday, Suella Braverman personally attacking Keir Starmer for him blocking the deportation of murderers and rapists. Very strong rhetoric. Do you see immigration now as being an absolutely central point for the next year, all the way through to the general election? This is going to be a major, major battleground.
Absolutely. I think it's certainly one of the key issues with the economy beside it, but immigration is a huge issue. Illegal immigration is a huge issue because actually, at the moment, we've got people exploiting our system. And actually what we've seen, I think Suella was absolutely right to attack Keir Starmer. I think there was a Labour councillor who'd literally been helping illegal immigrants get into the country and exploit the system. So I think Suella was completely right to highlight that. But when I talk to people out, whether it be in the pub or campaigning, immigration and illegal immigration, the pressure it's having on our infrastructure constantly comes up.
Holly Whitbread, Conservative Councillor for Epping and Thaydon in Essex. Really good to see you on the programme. We've got you in the next hour as well, haven't we?
Yeah, great. So thank you very much.
Now, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. And people who've been wrongfully convicted of crimes will no longer have their living costs docked from their compensation payments. That's according to new guidance issued by Justice Secretary Alex Chalk and follows the controversy sparked by the jailing of Andrew Morkinson, who spent 17 years behind bars for a crime he did not commit.
And thousands of supporters of Niger's coup leaders flocked to a stadium in the capital city yesterday, despite threats of military intervention from neighbouring countries. The military leadership has said it will not cave in to external pressure to stand down, worrying France and other EU countries who rely on it for critical uranium supplies.
A new UK airline is pledging to make customers feel like $1 million. Global Airlines aims to begin operations between Gatwick and New York by the middle of next year, before launching a London to LA route later on.
And here's Rachel Ayres with your all-important Monday weather forecast.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. The weekend was unsettled for many, but let's have a look at what we've got to start the new working week. After a bit of a cool night, plenty of clear skies around this morning, allowing for early brightness, but cloud will soon bubble up, allowing showers to develop, and these could be heavy, especially across northern and eastern parts of Scotland, where we might also see the odd thunderstorm. Though dry for many across the south with plenty of sunshine, so feeling pretty pleasant here with highs of 22 or even locally 23 in the southeast. Now into this evening, and those showers will slowly start to ease away to allow for some clear spells to develop ahead of this area of cloud and rain pushing in from the southwest, bringing outbreaks of rain and drizzle into the early hours of Tuesday. It'll be a clearer night there across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, where we'll see temperatures dropping quite widely in rural areas into the single figures. Now, throughout the rest of Tuesday, this rain and cloud will erratically make its way eastwards. This will mostly be quite light rain and drizzle, though there could be the odd heavier burst in there, but bringing quite a dull and gloomy day for much of England and Wales. Northern Ireland, Scotland and the far north of England remaining dry and sunny, so feeling pleasant here. Breezy along English Channel coast, but still seeing highs of 22.
That warm feeling inside. From boxed boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Stay with us as England take on Nigeria in the Women's World Cup. We'll get all the latest as we go through the sports with the legendary Aidan McGee. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The time is 6:23. Still lots to come on today's programme.
At 6:45, we'll speak to the Minister for Safeguarding, Sarah Dines, as the government prepare to house 50 migrants on the Bibby Stockholm barge in Dorset in Portland. Following weeks of delays, will it actually happen this week?
And at 7:20, we'll ask, has London become unlivable? With sky-high rents and mortgages, will the capital see a mass exodus of people?
And I've got a lot to say on that one. I've been here 28 years and I've seen it, I think, change much for the worse. Anyway, get in touch all the usual ways via email, of course, gbviews@gbnews.com. But Ellie, they're already getting going this morning on sunbeds.
Yeah, this is the front page of The Sun this morning. Hands off. Apparently there's a battle. It's between the Brits and the Germans about who's going to get the sunbeds on holiday. I've got you all talking this morning. Christy from Hull says she's a single mum of 2 children and she's taking them to Tunisia in September. First holiday, just the three of them. She says she is dreading the sunbed situation. I'm nervous enough going by myself, but then I have to deal with selfish people who set out their sunbeds, then disappear till after lunch. And who are these selfish people? Martin.
I am.
Family.
Yeah, I am one of them. Yeah, I must confess, I am a sunbed hog because it ruins my day if I don't get a good patch. And listen to this. Here's John. John's taking this seriously. This is a military movement. Listen, a few years ago, we were on holiday in Rhodes. My wife and I have been on our sunbeds from 10 a.m, quite a late start. At 1 p.m, we popped to the bar for a quick snack. When we were away, when we got back, about 20 minutes later, there was a big German woman laid on my towel on my sunbed. There were lots of empty beds around, so I asked her to move. She refused refused, so I tipped her off. Job done. You had to pay to get rid of the German. See, that's what we're talking about, Ellie.
Tipped her off. See, I took that as actually physically tipped her off the Sunday.
Oh, God, I was giving the benefit of the doubt.
No,
tipped her
I
in
think,
the pool?
well, John, if you want to clear that up, I think things got physical there.
My God.
Do let us know, because that's exactly what The Sun is reporting, that there are physical fights taking place in some hotels in Europe this summer. Also, I was reading this morning that one hotel put a 40-minute timer on sunbeds, so if you're not back within 40 minutes, they clear you off.
Yeah, I can get that, but then I just leave my kid there.
So you're so mean to your kids.
I'm not.
Do keep your views coming in on the sunbed story or any of the stories that we're talking about today. gbviews@gbnews.com. Well, it's sports time now, and joining us in the studio to go through all of the big stories of the day is Aidan McGee. Good morning to you, Aidan. How are you?
Isabel. Good to see you.
Yeah,
good to see you.
So
where do you want to start? Should we start with the football?
I think so, yeah. Wembley's a good place to start. Arsenal prevailing against Manchester City in the Community Shield. We call it the traditional curtain raiser to the season. Manchester City has spent big... Well, sorry, no, Arsenal actually spent big over the summer, particularly Declan Rice, £105 million from West Ham. Kovacic played for Manchester City, having joined from Chelsea. But Arsenal prevailed on penalties, and that was after scoring an equaliser in the 11th minute. Now, we've seen these controversial manoeuvres over the weekend, haven't we? It's been brought in quite late before the start of the season, whereby time wasting is clamped down on. And in most other games last season, there wouldn't have been an 11-minute of added time. And so that's when Arsenal scored, and they took it to penalties and won by 4-1. Now, Pep Guardiola's saying, look, at this rate, we're going to be playing until 8 o'clock in the morning. He's not happy about it at all. But having said that, it was a good staging post for Arsenal. I'm not sure about this chat afterwards by Arteta saying it's a mental block gone. They've lost their last 8 matches against Manchester City and haven't beaten them in the Premier League since 2015. So it's a huge hurdle. If you're going to beat Manchester City in the league this season, or any season, they're the team you have to overcome. So they've got past them in this game. But you need to talk advisedly around the Community Shield. It's not necessarily a marker to how the season's going to go. These two squads may look a bit different even this time next week when they get some more signings in the door. I think City certainly needs some more players. City have lost this game 3 times in the last 3 years, and they've still gone on to win the Premier League title 3 times. So it's not necessarily a mark of how the season goes, although it's a bit lazy to say that.
But there's 2 things to take away. It's a bit of a kind of exhibition match, isn't it? I mean, the old Charity Shield was always a bit of a stroll about.
Roy Keane always said, you know, if players at the end of their career are counting the Charity Shield or the Community Shield, as we call it, in their medal collection, that's a bit embarrassing.
Yeah, but 2 points. First of all, I think these longer games are going to become very much a part of the Premier League next season.
I think they will,
From the World Cup, this time wasting, we're going to see, I think, a lot of games over 100 minutes. So Fergie time is going to become all the time. I think that's going to have a big impact on the season. That's the first point. Secondly...
Can I just say something on that? When QPR at Watford on Saturday and we were 4-0 down, we saw 9 minutes held up as added time. We didn't want that. We were happy to just go.
Yeah, just get your first Kronenberg. Secondly, though, even though City lost, Cole Palmer came on and he scored a wonderful goal. He's a huge, exciting talent for England for the future.
Without doubt. So he's been eased into the side over the last year or so. I'd say he's been playing quite a key part in the cup competitions, which City take quite seriously. There's interest in taking him permanently from other clubs. They want to sign him, but City are not keen to let him go. They're open to the idea of letting him go on loan. Leicester and Brighton were quite up for that.
I think his price would have gone up after yesterday.
Well, that's a superb goal. He's obviously starred in England under-21s as well, scored in the final for England against Spain, and he scored yesterday with 13 minutes to go, and you think that's probably it. But as I say, Arsenal showed a bit of determination and a bit of grit to get that equaliser. They need 11 minutes to do it.
And it was a fluky bounce off own goal, really. I mean, look, they all count.
They do. I mean, it's funny because it probably wasn't even on target, and it got diverted in. But Leandro Trossard's going to play a big role for Arsenal this season. Last season, I felt for Arsenal, it was the squad that let them down in the run-in. They've got a couple of injuries, not least Saliba, the centre-back, and Rob Holding was too much of a downgrade to fill that hole. And I think it's the numbers they need in the squad, the quality. If you're going to win the league over 36 games, also they're in the Champions League this season, don't forget Arsenal, so they're going to have that to contend with. They're going to have their work cut out and they will need numbers, and that's why you saw a bit of the squad yesterday, and that bodes well for them.
Should we talk about the shocker, which is the Women's World Cup? And the favourites are out.
Yeah, well, it's good news for England. I mean, Brazil are already out at the end of last week. Canada, always dangerous. And then we saw the USA go out on penalties against Sweden. Half the team before the match didn't sing the national anthem due to it was a protest against racism and historic things, particularly the captain, Megan Rapinoe, didn't want to do it. So kind of think it doesn't set the tone for the right kind of, you know, how can you describe it? It doesn't set the tone for if you're going to doesn't put you in a good frame of mind when you're going to win the game.
Not very ambassadorial, is it, on the international stage?
No, not for Rapinoe, who's the captain, and she wasn't easily the most famous player in that squad. Nonetheless, they laboured to a draw against Sweden, who are not a bad side, but they lost out on penalties. Now, I don't think England needs to really be looking at other teams. They're good enough to just look at their own situation, their own players, their own form, the fact that they're the European champions, they're arriving in Australia with that crown already on their head. But having said that, it does help when some of the big guys get knocked out. And I think England play Nigeria today. Their coach, Serena Wiegmann, has been guarding against complacency. I think they'll comfortably get past Nigeria today. Nigeria, I wouldn't say stumbled through the group. They're quite a rugged side. They didn't lose in the group stage. They got 2 draws and a win to get through. But I expect England to line up in the quarter-final. From there, in Australia, who knows? I think England could become European and world champions, which would be an extraordinary achievement.
That would be
it'd also be a staging post to how far the women's game has come in the last couple of years, actually, because you wouldn't have imagined 3 or 4 years ago that England could achieve that both times.
OK, now after has to be said, a lacklustre outing against Wales,
terrible.
England have named their rugby union.
No, it's going to be later today.
World Cup squad is later today.
Later today, exactly. So it's a 33-man squad. No matter who's named, Martin, I'm worried for England because they showed no form in the Six Nations earlier in the year. The coach didn't look as if he was the kind of guy who was going to go in there and inspire a new level of performance, with the Eddie Jones era having ended quite flatly, even though it started very well. They got to a World Cup final, of course. Wales had no form in the Six Nations. They won all 5, they lost all 5 games, and then Wales looked fairly comfortable against England. England can't seem to score tries. And we're now, a month away from the start of the World Cup. I can't see beyond France and Ireland. Given that it's a Northern Hemisphere World Cup, I think France would be favourites given that they're in their home territory. I think there are concerns for England over Marcus Smith. He's been given... We're starting to see now perhaps why Eddie Jones didn't trust him. Doesn't seem like Steve Borthwick is putting his faith in him, but he's not paying dividends. And I don't think he'll be a casualty. I don't think he'll be left out. But I think England have got a hell of a lot of work to do, and I think a month is not enough time to sort the situation out. Having said that, it's a World Cup. England have got pedigree in the past. I talk about Ireland being the favourites. They always choke at World Cup. So in the same way that we've seen USA, Brazil, Canada go out of the Women's World Cup, the same could happen in the Rugby World Cup. You never know.
And it seems that once again, if you want international glory, we're relying on the Lionesses.
Yeah, exactly. So
Go Lionesses.
Yeah, very consistent, you have to say. And listen, they weren't impressive in the first 2 matches. Against Haiti and against Denmark, but they really hit their straps, didn't they, against China when a little bit of pressure was on. They get through to the next round against Nigeria today. That's a huge opportunity for them. I expect them, if they get past this match today and into the quarter-finals, I make them favourites. Sweet. Especially with the USA gone.
There you go, you heard it there first, Aidan McGee.
My predictions are quite good, you know.
Sweet, thanks, mate.
I don't know about that, Aidan. You've been caught out a few times on this programme.
Who knows?
He's a QPR support. What does he know?
Well, and there's that as well. Thanks, Aidan.
See you soon.
Now, coming up, can the government keep its promise to house 500 migrants on a barge in Dorset? We'll be discussing that with the Safeguarding Minister, Sarah Dine. So do stay with us. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 6:36. Let's bring you up to date now with today's front pages.
And the front page of The Times this morning says Tories seek Plan B for Rwanda if the policy fails.
And the Metro reports on Labour's confirmation that it will use barges to house asylum seekers too.
The Financial Times reports on European companies losing €100 billion due to sanctions on Russia.
And the Telegraph leads with bosses who hire illegal migrants facing ruinous fines.
And finally, The Star says Tibaldi Doe. Though
illogical, Captain.
No, I don't get it either. But those are your front pages.
Yeah, when you have to explain a pun, you know it's a bad pun, don't you? Anyway, let's go through the pages this morning in more detail. Is the legendary actor Christopher Biggins, national treasure, and actress and wellbeing guru Vineyard Taylor. Good morning to you both. Biggins.
Good morning.
Let's kick off with you, Biggins, of course. There's only one story today. Sunbed wars. Hands off in the sun.
I know. I find this whole thing extraordinary because, of course, the Germans were famous for it. And now the Germans are saying, you know, it's our fault. We're the ones who started it all, which is just ridiculous. I mean, nobody does that, do they? Nobody goes and puts down.
Yeah.
Martin, you don't.
I send my children, I deploy them like Fagin. Get down there. That's the one I want my old son. Second row, yep, there.
Before 7 a.m.
Well, I'm reading here in the Sun, and they've got hands off, HANS, hands off, which I think is quite a good. They're very good on. Yeah. What they're saying is, there's a man here. One of the dads sets his alarm for 6:30.
Yeah,
now that's no holiday.
Well, it's all part of the fun for some people, though. I mean,
fun?
Yeah. What do you reckon about it?
You're highly competitive, aren't you?
Yeah.
I mean, it gives me anxiety because I'd want the best bed, but then I don't want to be... You know, this, like, fake running, like, you know, the shuffling?
The dad run.
Yeah, yes, that one. I mean, it is fascinating to watch. I always go self-catering. I've got 4 boys. I cannot cope with telling them to shh and behave by the pool. That gives me anxiety as well. Yeah. So I just keep our madness self-contained.
Very good idea.
Yeah, very good idea.
Yeah, and you don't have to rush then for your...
No, and they're just so noisy and boisterous. It's just embarrassing. So I just try and, I keep them away from the public.
You're staying quiet on this one, Eddie. What's your position?
Well, I'm not one to do the run. No. And I'm not one to set an alarm either. So I just hedge my bets and hope for the best. But that in itself is anxiety-inducing.
It is!
Yeah. Because you head down to the pool, and I usually head down.
And you're shoved at the back near the loo, and it stinks. Awful.
I'll be by the loo, or we'll be separated, and it's just, it's not
If you stay in a luxury hotel, they'll do it for you.
Adults only.
Oh, I think
that
so.
one.
Yeah. What?
The adults only ones.
The adults, exactly. I think, and that's what I like to do. I like to...
Civilised. You don't have this issue.
No, not at all, and I find it disgusting.
And this article is terrifying because it's saying in some resorts this summer it's like breaking into violence.
Yes.
People are fighting over sunbeds.
Oh, it's just a ludicrous.
Brits abroad representing again.
Well, I wouldn't. Although we had a message in from John here, who was in Rose, and he tipped the German woman off.
Well, we think so. We're not sure if he means he paid her or whether he physically tipped her off. We haven't worked that one out yet.
But it sounded like tipped her into the pool.
That's what I thought.
We need video evidence of this.
We were in Corfu, and I did pay the man a little bit of money to actually, because what I find as I'm getting older and my knee and all the things that are going wrong with me is that in fact they're too low sunbeds.
Oh yeah, once you get down,
so getting up is embarrassing. You sort of had to struggle. So what they did was they did a double one for me in height, which was great, marvelous.
So they stacked one on top of the other. So
exactly.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
The Biggins and the lounger.
Well, Biggins is dressed for the sun today, aren't you?
I am.
We get the sunshine.
I know. I've got my shorts on and my bright jacket.
You can't see his lovely legs out. But
no, they're good.
On your linen shirt.
But if you write in, I will show you. My legs, that is.
I need a bit of sun around them.
Anyway. Lavinia, let's go to you, shall we? Front page of the Daily Mail.
OK, so I don't think there's any sunbed wars going on here. So, if Rwanda bid is thwarted, the illegal immigrants will be flown 4,000 miles down to Ascension Island, which is just off the coast. Well, it's actually it's smack bang in the middle of the South Atlantic between Brazil and Africa. And it's British owned, so it kind of gets around the sort of legal situation that we've got with Rwanda. And it'll stop, I suppose, the NIMBYs, because there's only 800 people who live there. And, of course, I think we'll get the human rights because they've only got a post office, a small medical centre. I think the nearest hospital would be in Cape Town. But, yeah, this is another solution to what's happening in the Channel, really. And I didn't even know we had an island down here.
Yeah, we do, yeah. And actually, this has been on the cards for quite a long time. Like the Reform Party, for example, have made this their policy because it's a British sovereign territory, so it gets around this kind of human rights thing. And look, if we can build Nightingale hospitals, Biggins, you know, in Britain during the pandemic, surely we can build facilities on an island. What do you make of this plan?
I think all these plans are so sad in a way. I mean, you know, it's a ridiculous situation that we're in, that we have to find different places all over the world to put people. I mean, you know, it's ridiculous. Your point, I didn't realise there was an island, nor did I realise there was.
Well, Charles Darwin described it as hideous. So we're going to have to do some...
But
no, he didn't like it.
Do you remember the Falklands? I thought that was in Scotland when that first happened. I thought, why are we at war with Scotland? You know.
Yeah, point taken. Shall we move on to a topic that always gets people going on GB News? In the Mirror, one of your stories, Biggins, 74% demand action on danger dogs.
Well, I think quite rightly, too. I mean, this terrifying story in the Mirror about my Jack lost his life, but the culprit's jail term was an insult. And, of course, this poor boy, Jack Liz, was 10 years old, was mauled to death by this dog. And I just don't understand how this can happen. I mean, is it because they're inbred, some of the dogs?
I think it's how they're raised. I mean, I suppose you would have a dog that would be naturally more aggressive if it's raised in a certain way. It's just like children, you know. And I think often these dogs are like a status symbol, you know, to be like street tough.
Yes.
And of course, it's not the dog's fault; it's the owner's fault. Like with children, you know, you're not inherently evil. You're raised that way, and I think that's where the problem lies. You need to punish these people who have gone out to raise an aggressive dog as a status symbol, like carrying a gun or something. You know? It's that sort of like moronic behaviour.
And they feel good, I suppose, walking
tough
it.
Guys,
you know,
Come on.
And they do look terrifying, some of those dogs.
Just because we did a story on dog napping recently. And it turns out these tough dogs are actually really targeted by dog nappers, which strikes you as counterintuitive. You think they'd be taking...
You mean they steal them?
They steal the big dogs because apparently they're incredibly friendly, you know, even to strangers if they're approached in a respectful manner. So there's a huge conversation around, is it the dogs, is it the owners, and...
I feel like we've seen a rise in these dog attacks, though. I'd have to say.
Yes, I agree.
It feels like we're seeing headlines regularly you know, about children.
Yeah, I mean, I got two dogs in the pandemic. I think a lot of us did, to be perfectly honest. And actually, one of them disappeared last night, and I think my husband's still looking for him right now. I mean, he does it all the time, so don't worry. He's running around Lancashire, just causing mayhem. But that's another story. But I think there's just an increase in generally people having dogs, and of course, they're so expensive as well.
Yeah. The vets. What about the vet?
I know. Our dog broke its hip. It was like $2,000.
Yes.
I was going, what are we doing?
I know.
So, Tanya, do you think a bit of it is some people who got dogs during the pandemic just hadn't done their research?
I didn't
realise what they needed to do in terms of discipline and training?
I mean, I don't know what I'm doing with it. I mean, I'm very fortunate. They're very gentle dogs. But, I mean, I didn't do... They're called Podencos. They're Spanish hunting dogs, and the natural prey is rabbits, and we live on a housing estate called the Warren, so it's ridiculous. I mean, it's just stupid.
That's a killer.
Yeah, basically, they're just poor rabbits. So I think a lot of us were a little bit naive and just kind of like just got onto the dog train, really.
Yeah. Well, you will certainly have a view on that story. This one, as Martin said, always gets you going. Is there such a thing as a bad dog, or is it just a bad owner? Do let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com. OK, Davinia, let's go to the Eye, shall we? In the front page, and we're talking about another pandemic.
Oh, I know, and I wonder how many billionaires this one's going to make. And the fact that it's in some secret lab, which they've actually said is in Salisbury in Wiltshire. So I think they're just ramping it up again to just get us... I don't know what the end goal for this is. They've called it Disease X to make it really scary, and it's going to take 100 days to get... from the disease X being found to getting jabs in our arms. So again, it's going to be, this isn't tested, this is more hype, and you know, I don't know what the end game for this is. Any ideas?
So what they have, they've got this new kind of laboratory with 200 people in it. I guess they were criticised a lot, the government, for not being prepared for a pandemic. So this is part of preparedness, you could argue, but also begins, is it part of nudging us towards this perpetual state of fear so we're easy to control?
Well, I suppose you could say that. I personally hope it isn't, because I think that's really rather terrifying thought. But, you know, it could be that. I mean, it's like, for instance, we've got to get our head around the fact that they're here to stay. It's not necessarily, you know...
Why? Why all of a sudden do we have more risk of pandemics? So they've got this new thing called the government's new National Risk Register, warned that there's up to 1 in 4 chance of new pandemics in the next 5 years. I thought the last one was the Spanish flu. You know, that was over 100 years ago. So I don't quite understand why all of a sudden we're at more risk, and all of a sudden it's going to, like, £1 billion pharmaceutical companies are going to leverage off this and become even richer and more powerful.
Well, I suppose that's the world we're living in, isn't it?
Why? I mean, we've got antibiotics, we've got hospitals, we've got everything that they didn't have 100 years ago. I just don't understand why all of a sudden we've got these crazy diseases.
But we may be getting too used to all these things that they're giving, you know. I mean, it's probably running off us, you know, that we can't live without all these drugs.
So I'd say natural immunity is what we need to go back to, because you're never going to outrun Mother Nature, ever. You know, we're not that wise, we're not that clever.
But it's interesting that people now are doing COVID tests again, and I don't think yes, I do think they should be, because, you know, they really are. And I think that, you know, we have to accept that COVID is like the new flu.
Yeah.
You know, that is something we're going to have to live with.
Yeah.
Every time one of my friends sends a COVID test, I always think they're pregnant. I'm like, oh my God!
But perhaps this story is more about preparedness. I mean, the government got caught out with COVID, really, and making decisions very quickly. I mean, there were short of PPE, weren't they, in the hospitals? There were shortage of masks at the very beginning. Vaccines took a while to roll out.
I mean, we surely should have kept the Nightingale hospitals open if we're going to expect one in the next 5 years. It's like that's planning.
And what they're doing in this way, it does sound like a bit of a sci-fi X-Files type lab.
I think so.
They're taking the potential risk viruses like avian flu and so on and so forth, and they're preparing vaccines that may work against them. So it's quite a high-tech thing. So on the one hand, be prepared, be ready, be on your toes. On the other hand, you know, is it just keeping us always, oh my God, we're going to have to face lockdown again? And I don't think we want to go that route.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That was so detrimental to my children. I've got 4 boys. One of them has just done his GCSEs, and I know he'll have missed out on loads. I mean, I can't teach him. I've got no patience. I'm not a teacher. I know that it's definitely impact them, so...
OK, Davinia, Biggins, do stay with us. We're just going to cross over to our minister and then we'll be back with you. Because employees and landlords could be fined up to £60,000 for allowing illegal immigrants to work or rent. That's according to plans announced by the Home Secretary.
Yeah, the move comes as the government hopes to move asylum seekers from hotel rooms onto the Bibby Stockholm barge in Portland, Dorset.
Well, let's hear more now from the Minister for Safeguarding, Sarah Dines. Good morning to you, Miss Dines. Really good to see you this morning. So we'll get on to those fines in a moment for supporting of illegal migrants. But let's start with the Bibby Stockholm barge, shall we? Because it's been delay after delay after delay getting these 50 migrants onto this barge. Can you confirm that that will happen today or at least within the next few days?
Well, we're expecting to move, good morning everybody, in the next few days. It's very exciting to start getting people out of the hotels onto other places like the Bibby Stockholm. It's a very good idea and we're hoping for it to be quite shortly.
Sarah, we had Susan Phoenix on the show earlier this morning. She organised the campaign against the barge, and also the refugees welcome the anti-racist in Portland don't want the barge either. All of them say 500 men will simply overwhelm the NHS in the area. It's only a town of 12,000. Men will be roaming around the streets. Nobody wants this in Portland. Why are you pressing ahead?
I'm sorry, there's some difficulty with the sound here. I can't hear you.
OK. Let's start that. Can you hear us now?
We'll come back to our papers guest for a moment there. We'll just try and re-establish the sound there with our Minister Sarah Dines, and then we'll come back to her once we've done that. Biggins, let's change tack completely, shall we?
Yes, why
Daily
not?
Star, the front page, and William Shatner. Why not?
It's a stupid story, this. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, Star Trek's William Shatner reckons aliens haven't visited us. I mean, what's he talking about? We know there's a couple of aliens in this studio. I mean, they're here. And they're some from the north. No, he's saying that he's wrong. We know he's wrong, rather, the Star says today. I mean, I don't know. Do you think we have had aliens here before? I mean, I'm not quite convinced we have.
I've read a book years ago by a guy called Eric von Däniken, and it's all about the ancient pyramids and how they weren't actually built by man, because they've got some, like, crazy sort of symmetry and the tonnage of it. I mean, it's absolutely preposterous that we could have, like, wheeled it on, like, stones being moved thousands and thousands of miles, perfectly symmetrical. I mean, I can't even articulate it. So that got me thinking that we had ancient aliens many hundreds of thousands of years ago. Yeah. But to be honest, if I was an alien, I'd just turn right and just go find another planet. They are not quite right.
So do you think the aliens built Stonehenge then? Do you think that was...
I don't think that is mathematically precise as the pyramids of Giza, and there's something to do with the sun and the alignment and the size of the base is exactly the symmetry of the planet Earth. It's the mathematical.
They were very clever in those days, though, when those builders, weren't they?
But, like, to the point of, like, you'd need a compass,
like absolute
pure maths.
Yeah,
pure maths. So much better than Stonehenge, which is a little bit more rusty.
Well, I think
that's the British, isn't it?
It'll British way.
Just shove it off. It's nice.
The pyramids are simply a feat of incredible human ingenuity. And
I agree.
So incredible that we look to some outside force. I just think it was like well done team pyramid.
Okay.
They were just like really good at building stuff back in those days, and they were pioneers on mathematics and the alignment of the planets and the stars to use as a plumb line.
We forgot that maths and then relearned it, I guess.
They were great. But there was an alloy found in a meteorite the other week, which scientists looked at, and they said it couldn't have come from Earth because it simply has alloys and stuff that's not Earth-bound. So the conversation does constantly go on about, is there anybody out there? I think there has to be.
Well, there was that congressional hearing, wasn't there? I think it was last week in the United States, and it was on UFOs, and it was basically high up military armed forces personnel saying that they had either seen it or they knew that the government knew more than what they were letting on. So that was really interesting to see it in a court.
I'm in two minds about it, because I'm kind of happy as we are guessing, and then all of a sudden it would just completely implode the planet, wouldn't it? If we suddenly thought there was a more intelligent being, we'd all of a sudden become, I don't know, the prey. You know what I mean? We wouldn't be the alpha dominant species.
It makes you wonder if they come down and look at Britain and go, no, we're going to clear off.
It's definitely too rainy there.
Well, I know a few aliens, and they are very interesting, I have to say. Yeah, they're...
Go on, pray tell more.
No, I couldn't. They'd be furious with me.
Davide, let's look at the front page of the Daily Telegraph, shall we? And this is on the cashless society that we're heading towards.
So NatWest has granted itself sweeping new powers to limit cash deposits and withdrawals, fueling warnings that banks are forcing customers towards a cashless society. And I know GBNews have got a big campaign about, saying no to just a cashless...
Don't kill cash.
Don't kill cash, And the idea that you can't deposit what cash you have, it seems to be... I mean, I've got a manufacturing company. I manufacture things, and we are cashless. But I still appreciate having, say, £20 in my back pocket for X, Y and Z. I like being able to give somebody a tip. But the NatWest are actually saying it's to protect our customers from the risk of fraud. Surely the risk from fraud is far greater online. That's where the billions of pounds gets laundered. Billions of pounds. Not somebody who's like a taxi driver or a waitress or something who wants to put in a few £100 into their account, or a present from your grandmother. It's absolute. I can't work online very well. No. All the banks are closing down. I went to NatWest in my hometown of Clitheroe, and I didn't even realise it had closed.
Oh, they're closed everywhere in London. It's very difficult to find a cash catch point
And
in
you
London.
can go online and then you get on hold, and I have no patience for all those.
And I love cash, though. I really
like your Reddies?
I don't use it. And do you know what really annoys me? Is you're out and someone is asking for money, you know, for someone who's sleeping on the street.
Or busking or whatever.
Or busking. And I say to them, why don't they have a thing where I can put my card on?
Yeah.
They should get one of those if they want. I'm very happy to give them some money, but I just don't carry it. And then they say, the other day I was sitting in a rather sophisticated cafe in the centre of London.
Yes.
And having a coffee, and someone came up and asked me, and I said, I don't have any money. They said, oh, yeah, look at you having your coffee here, you know, and all that sort of thing. Really aggressive it became.
Oh, dear.
Yes.
You don't carry cash as you would have done, would you? And it's a shame. It's a shame
is a
you can't
shame.
spontaneously be charitable or appreciate someone's art on the tube. It just doesn't work anymore, does it?
Look, Davinia Biggins, we have run out of time, I'm afraid. But you're with us all morning and we're very much looking forward to it, so thank you very much. Now here's Rachel Ayres with your Monday forecast.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. The weekend was unsettled for many, but let's have a look at what we've got to start the new working week. After a bit of a cool night, plenty of clear skies around this morning, allowing for early brightness, but cloud will soon bubble up, allowing showers to develop, and these could be heavy, especially across northern and eastern parts of Scotland, where we might also see the odd thunderstorm. Though dry for many across the south, with plenty of sunshine, so feeling pretty pleasant here with highs of 22 or even locally 23 in the southeast. Now into this evening, and those showers will slowly start to ease away to allow for some clear spells to develop ahead of this area of cloud and rain pushing in from the southwest, bringing outbreaks of rain and drizzle into the early hours of Tuesday. It'll be a clearer night though across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, where we'll see temperatures dropping quite widely in rural areas into the single figures. Now, throughout the rest of Tuesday, this rain and cloud will erratically make its way eastwards. This will mostly be quite light rain and drizzle, though there could be the odd heavier burst in there, but bringing quite a dull and gloomy day for much of England and Wales. Northern Ireland, Scotland and the far north of England remaining dry and sunny, so feeling pleasant here. Breezy along English Channel coast, but still seeing highs of 22.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel. Do stay with us. We'll have more on whether the government will fulfil its...
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock on Monday, the 7th of August. Today, asylum seekers are set to arrive on the UK's first migrant barge in the coming days.
Critics have dubbed the vessel a death trap, whilst other residents in Portland, Dorset have expressed anger over the impact it will have on their local community.
Elsewhere, the Home Secretary has announced plans to clamp down on landlords and businesses who take on illegal migrants. But do we have the police resources to follow through with the proposals?
The pub landlord has accused animal rights group PETA of wokery after they demanded he change the name of his boozer from the Old Bulldog to the Old Mutt due to health concerns surrounding the breed of the dog.
And here's your latest forecast.
The weekend saw plenty of wet and windy weather, but what does the weather have in store as we start the new week? Join me later for a full forecast with all the details.
Top of the morning, I'm Martin Daubney.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News. Right, summer holidays means getting on a sunbed for a lot of you, and this has made us chuckle this morning. It's the front page of The Sun this morning, hands off. Apparently it's the Germans versus the Brits for nabbing a sunbed first thing in the morning when you're on holiday. The Germans are notoriously very good at it, aren't they?
They are.
But apparently we are catching them up.
Yeah, so what happened is Der Bild, which is the German national newspaper, put out an article accusing the Brits of sunbed warfare.
Yeah.
Getting in too early, too quick for the Germans, but the Sun, in a classic piece of tabloid counter-attack, sent one of their men to...
all women?
All women. One of their reporters, one of they thems, to the Algarve, and apparently the Germans are just as bad. One of the dads who was German declaring that the Germans are winning the war of the sunbeds.
So who is winning the war of the sunbeds? Well, we heard from John a little bit earlier on, who said that he went for lunch for 20 minutes and returned to find, in his words, a big German woman laying on his towel on his sunbeds, and he tipped her off. And we were wondering, I thought he meant physically tipped her off the sunbed. You said...
I thought tipped her off, as in gave her a few quid to get lost.
Gave her a bit of cash. John has just emailed in to confirm that, yes, he actually did tip her onto the floor.
So John got the frail line, just went woof, and put her on poolside or into the drink. I mean, that is taking it to the next level,
John, you are what this article is all about. That you are part of this warfare. How did that go down? I can imagine it was... entertaining, to say the least. Yeah. I hope she's all right.
And then Tom is like saying that we've all lost the plot. It's not much of a holiday if that's all you're doing, lying on a sunbed. Best part of the day, get out and do some sightseeing. Yeah, but Tom, you can do a bit of both.
Yeah. Do let us know if you've gone on holiday so far this summer. If you have experienced sunbed wars, who is to blame? And also, what are the top tips for getting hold of a sunbed? If you're Martin Daubney, you send your children down before 7 a.m. to babysit the sunbeds, which I think is really cruel.
No, they've got to earn their pay. They've got to pay their way.
It's no holiday for them. And should we do a few on migrants? Because lots of you getting in touch on that, and it is, of course, our top story. Andy says the answer to the migrant problem is first, stop rescuing them from the sea and forcibly turn the boats back.
Yeah, something a lot of people are not quite sure on the legalities of that. It'd be good to know what the government's take on that is. Gary, I live in Portsmouth, and we are an island, and we have taken more illegal immigrants than any other place. Take them back to their first safe country they passed through. It's a complete mess.
And David has been in touch to say, is it possible to book 2 weeks on the barge at the end of August? I could do with seeing a dentist and an appointment with a doctor. No chance of me getting them round our way.
I mean, David, you know, that is a funny point, but also a serious point.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people in Portland, we spoke to Susan Phoenix from the Barge campaign earlier, saying they can't get a doctor's appointment, they can't get a dental appointment, and here they are with full en-suite medical care. It's one that will roll and roll.
Yeah, it will. So do keep your views coming in on sunbeds, on the migrant issue, on any of the stories that we're talking about today. Do let us know what you think on those. gbviews@gbnews.com.
And precisely on that story, the first group of migrants are expected to be housed on the Bibby Stockholm barge in the coming days, despite opposition from local groups.
Yes, the barge, set to accommodate 500 male asylum seekers, arrived at Portland Harbour last month after being tugged from Falmouth.
And let's speak again now to Holly Whitbread, a Conservative councillor from Essex. Top of the morning again, Holly. So we heard from the Residents Association earlier. They feel they're just not being listened to. The local area of only 12,000 people being completely overwhelmed by 500 military-aged men. The anti-racism campaign don't want it. How did we get to this situation? And do you think the government will press ahead with it, despite widespread local resistance?
Yeah, well, I absolutely get the concerns of the local people, and actually Wethersfield is a similar example in Essex, where an old military base is being used. So I completely understand the local concerns, the impact on infrastructure, whether it be GP places or school places, and I've actually seen that in my own community through hotels. I mean, the government have moved to this model because ultimately it costs the taxpayer less. Already we've seen hotels up and down the country being used at great expense. So this is a model that, while people are being processed through the asylum system, will cost the taxpayer less, but that doesn't dampen the concerns which local people have, and which I completely sympathise with. Ultimately, what the government needs to focus on is reducing illegal immigration, tackling it firsthand and stopping the boats. And actually, the government are doing that. They've recently put laws through Parliament to try and tackle illegal immigration, but obviously they've got so many obstacles in their ways, particularly with kind of human rights lawyers who are really kind of pushing this and exploiting the situation.
So, Holly, paint a picture for us. How much of a strain is illegal migration actually putting on local councils and local communities as well?
So it does have a big impact, so particularly in terms of kind of school places, but also GP places and general healthcare. So it's a huge pressure when actually already it's a long time to get a doctor's appointment often, and it's unfair on local people. But ultimately, all that can be done is that we can get through that backlog. And to be fair to the government, they are getting through that backlog, particularly that has built up since the pandemic. But most importantly, starting to reduce the number of people coming over. And I think there's been quite a big reduction, particularly in Albanian illegal immigrants who have been coming over.
Immigration now front and centre. Feels like we're gearing up for a general election campaign. Yesterday, Suella Braverman accusing Keir Starmer of having a band of cronies, the lawyers you mentioned, stopping deportations, also personally attacking him for blocking the deportation of rapists and murderers. Today, front page of the Daily Mail, the Ascension Islands, British territory, being teed up as kind of Rwanda Part 2. What do you make of that plan?
I think, well, first of all, immigration is obviously going to be a huge issue. The economy and illegal immigration, the pressures that's having on infrastructure, is really at the key of what people are talking about at the moment. So I think the government are right to do all they can to stop illegal immigration and actually stop these lawyers who are taking advantage of the system. And we have seen Labour, there's a Labour council the other day was seen on TikTok doing a video trying to help people get into the country illegally. So I think Suella is absolutely right, and the government are right to look at different solutions to tackling this, and actually, but ultimately, stopping the boats, which is the main goal.
Let's talk about what our minister was about to speak about from the government a little bit earlier on, actually, which is the tripling of fines for those who are found to be supporting illegal migrants. That's through work or through somewhere to live. What do you make of those plans? Do you think that will act as a deterrent?
I think it's the right thing to do. I mean, the idea behind the plans is that actually, if people are using illegal immigrants in their businesses or as landlords, then they're almost made kind of bankrupt. Their business is brought to an end with these really high fines, and that is absolutely the right thing to do, as you've highlighted the challenges around the enforcement. So the government have made it clear that this is one of the key priorities, and actually it's to de-incentivise people to come into the country in the first place if they don't think they'll be able to find employment or find a home, and it's going to be challenging to come over.
Yeah, two-pronged attack on this. So it's a £45,000 first fine for any employer found guilty of employing an illegal immigrant. In terms of landlords, it's a £1,000 fine first time, going up to 10 grand. But here's the point, Holly. The biggest landlord of asylum seekers is the government.
Yeah.
Serco, 30,000 in residences, let alone £7 million a day on hotels. Could we find ourselves in a situation where the government is fining itself?
Well, probably a slightly different situation where the government are kind of processing these illegal immigration cases, and actually, in some of the cases, sending people back if they're they're not found to be needing asylum. So probably a slightly different situation, but ultimately I think this is to take action against those probably smaller individuals and businesses who are using this illegal immigration actually, which is often on the outskirts as well, so people who've kind of slipped through the asylum system and are really working illegally in the country.
OK, Holly Whitbread, really good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
It's certainly a topic that's going to run and run and run.
Yeah, absolutely. Frank says it really amazes me how selfish the public in the south are, complaining about facilities, etc. In the north, the migrant crisis started decades ago. It's been totally ignored now. Now it's come home to roost as the north dumping ground. There's no room left.
It's an excellent point, because that was the central driving ethos of the Brexit referendum. Those people that felt in places like Boston, places like Skegness, places up north, they'd seen a huge influx of people from outside taking jobs, putting huge pressure on public services. Yeah, they weren't listened to. I absolutely hear that. They weren't listened to, and Brexit was meant to be their shout back.
Yeah, and Ian makes the point that it's not just happening here. Italy are full on their borders, also Germany, France and numerous other countries having big issues with illegal migration.
It's a great point, and politically I think it's going to become a central driving force of all of the elections right across the continent.
Yeah, absolutely. Do keep those views coming in, gbnews@gbnews.com.
OK, to our next story now. A pub landlord has accused animal rights group PETA of wokery after they demanded he change the name of his boozer.
Yes, Mike Newton, the owner of the Old Bulldog, revealed that he'd received a letter from the animal welfare charity urging him to change the name of his pub to the Old Mutt, because the current name apparently encourages people to buy sickness-prone breeds. Well, our Midlands reporter Will Hollis has more.
A proper British boozer with a proper British name. The Old Bulldog. A name that's now been splashed across the national news. And all because of this bulldog, Atticus. Mike and his wife Laurie rescued him.
If you look closely into his mouth, come on, sweetie, you can see that his teeth have been ground down with an angle grinder, which is usually a sign that he was a bait dog in the dog fighting.
When Mike bought the Sea Lion, a humble corner pub in Stoke-on-Trent, he fancied a new name and thought Atticus's breed was perfect. But not everyone agrees. Animal rights group PETA reckons it glorifies brachiophilic breeds of dog, like bulldogs and pugs, that develop breathing difficulties and other health issues because of their squash snouts and skull shape. They sent Mike a letter telling him to scrap the name.
This is a letter on my phone, and essentially it says what we want to do is to get rid of the name, the Old Bulldog, replace it with the Old Mutt. Well, I was really quite cross about it, because I felt that it was intrusive, it was patronising, and it was also an attack on a cherished national symbol, the bulldog, which we love in this country. It was an attack on small business.
PETA, which stands for People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, says that promoting breeds with breathing impairments normalises their suffering and encourages others to get them.
The name of a pub is not going to influence anyone in what dog they choose to buy. And that was pretty much their reasoning.
They say they'd even pay to help rename the pub to the Old Mutt, which they think will go down better with locals.
Why should animal rights get involved in it? It's nothing to do with them, what the name of a pub is.
People are going to have the dog if they want the dog, if they love the breed of the dog. It was called the Sea Lion before, so did that encourage people to keep sea lions? No.
Mike, who's a Conservative parliamentary candidate, says the name is staying.
Well, there's obviously a woke agenda globally on many fronts, isn't there? But, you know, here in the Midlands, then they've met the match, because we're not changing the name of the pub. You know, we love our bulldogs, and we're not backing down on this.
The Stoke pub was renamed once. Doing it twice, well, that would be barking mad.
Nice dog, nice pub.
Will Hollis, GB News, in Stoke-on-Trent.
What a fantastic package. The old Sea Lion, the old Bulldog. Gotta love it. OK, we're joined now in the studio by Margarita Shachkova, spokesperson for PETA. Margarita, what's wrong with the beautiful British Bulldog?
Well, you know, thank you so much for having me here today. And the bottom line of this story is really that bulldogs are being bred to suffer. And they can barely, you know, they're being born with the highly deformed faces. And because of their really exaggerated features, such as really flat faces, really shortened airways, they are struggling to breathe, let alone, you know, chase a bull in a park, have a run. And, you know, these dogs are as far from, you know, how a normal dog would look like. And did you know that 90% of bulldogs are being born through C-section? And it's just because, you know, we bred them to have their heads so enormous, so their mothers can't even give birth to them normally. So we really should stop breeding these dogs. We really should stop promoting these dogs. We really should stop glamorizing these dogs.
So, I mean, putting aside the obvious issues that you have with the breed aside, why go after a Great British pub? I mean, you heard from Mike's wife there, Mike being the landlord, saying the name of the pub doesn't actually change anybody's opinion on what kind of dog they want to buy. It's just the name of a pub.
Well, you know, we all know that we as society, we are affected by the pop culture, and we follow people on social media. We are affected by what we see on TV, and we can, you know, be even influenced by what we see in our local pub. And given that this pub has recently rebranded from the Sea Lion to the Old Bulldog, we just thought they might be open to change their name again if it would help some animals. And we are suggesting to call it the Old Mutt, because mutts are some of the healthiest dogs, and they're usually way healthier. They have longer lifespans than their purebred cousins.
I'm no doubt there'll be many people out there sort of throwing their toast at their telly over this, because they love their bulldogs. We know GB News viewers love their dogs, full stop. Is this the most effective way of getting your point across? I mean, trying to cancel a pub name, you've gone for two things here. The Great British Pub and the Great British Bulldog. Of course, people are going to resist. Are people going to listen to your message if all you try and do is cancel dogs and cancel pubs?
Well, we are not here to cancel anyone, and PETA is not the only organization speaking about it. The Royal Veterinary Society, for example, is encouraging people to think twice before they buy any flat-faced dogs, before they get any flat-faced dogs, as they're more prone to severe health issues and they have shorter lifespans. And I just wanted to emphasize how difficult it is for them to breathe. As some vets say, that for them, breathing is like for us to breathe through, you know, through a straw. Imagine spending your entire life breathing through a straw. How would you feel? Would you be able to exercise? Would you be able to chase the ball? And there are so many, you know, there are so many adoptable, brilliant mutts in the shelters that people can go. So I would really encourage anyone never to buy dogs, to adopt, not to shop.
But don't you think you're painting a bit of a doomsday scenario? I've got friends who've got bulldogs and they're perfectly happy dogs. I mean, are you putting a worst case scenario across here to try and frighten everybody or try and force legislation? But there are many, many healthy, wonderful bulldogs who don't experience what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, again, there are so many veterinarians up and down the countries. They have to perform surgeries on flat-faced dogs, and it's not just bulldogs I'm talking about. It's also pugs. It's also other dogs with face deformities. So many of them struggle, and you know. So many of them struggle to breathe. So many of them are prone to infections, to eye infections. And dogs really don't care about their looks, you know? It's us humans who bred them to live this way, who bred them to live their life suffering. So we really should reconsider, and our ethical standards should be high enough to stop breeding dogs deliberately to make them suffer.
Mike Newton, the landlord in this story, says that in the email from Peter, you actually offered him money to help to rename the pub. Don't you think in terms of Peter's finances, that could be better spent on actually saving animals, or a campaign to actually save animals' lives rather than just the name of a pub?
Well, you know, we don't want the small business to be out of pocket, so that's why we suggested covering this cost. And we really hope that changing the name would encourage people to reconsider buying flat-faced dogs. And also, if we're speaking about the money here, one thing we really should look at is the breeding industry, as this industry is just like all about money. And the Kennel Club and Crafts, they're really encouraging people to go after particular breeds, to go after particular looks, with no regards whatsoever to dog health. So I think that's the issue we should be looking at really closely.
OK, Margarita Sachkova, really good to see you this morning. Thank you very much for your time. You will have an opinion on that at home. Should the old bulldog be renamed to the old mutt? Do let us know. GBNews@gbnews.com.
And more to the point, if you're a bulldog owner, let us know of your experiences with what I think is a fantastic, wonderful, affectionate, friendly, family-friendly breed. Or if they pass their sell date, let us know.
Yeah.
OK, now let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
And people who've been wrongly convicted of crimes will no longer have their living costs docked from their compensation payments. That's according to new guidance issued by Justice Secretary Alex Chalk and follows the controversy sparked by the jailing of Andrew Wilkinson, who spent 17 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit.
Almost 100,000 more school leavers could miss out on top A-level grades this year. Experts have warned they are unlikely to fall back to 2019 levels as teachers developed a taste for awarding top grades in some subjects during the pandemic, which markers will be reluctant to relinquish.
And new research suggests that firms are hesitant to recruit new staff because of concerns over the economic situation. The Recruitment and Employment Confederation reported a fall in permanent staff appointments, blaming a weaker economic climate and reduced market confidence.
And here's Rachel Ayres with your all-important Monday weather forecast.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. The weekend was unsettled for many, but let's have a look at what we've got to start the new working week. After a bit of a cool night, plenty of clear skies around this morning, allowing for early brightness, but cloud will soon bubble up, allowing showers to develop, and these could be heavy, especially across northern and eastern parts of Scotland, where we might also see the odd thunderstorm. Though dry for many across the south with plenty of sunshine, so feeling pretty pleasant here with highs of 22 or even locally 23 in the southeast. Now into this evening, and those showers will slowly start to ease away to allow for some clear spells to develop ahead of this area of cloud and rain pushing in from the southwest, bringing outbreaks of rain and drizzle into the early hours of Tuesday. It'll be a clearer night there across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, where we'll see temperatures dropping quite widely in rural areas into the single figures. Now, throughout the rest of Tuesday, this rain and cloud will erratically make its way eastwards. This will mostly be quite light rain and drizzle, though there could be the odd heavier burst in there, but bringing quite a dull and gloomy day for much of England and Wales. Northern Ireland, Scotland and the far north of England remaining dry and sunny, so feeling pleasant here. Breezy along English Channel coasts, but still seeing highs of 22.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, with sky-high mortgages and rents, is London becoming unlivable? We'll be debating that in just a moment. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. The time is 7:26, still lots to come on today's programme.
Including the Home Secretary Suella Braverman has vowed to triple fines for landlords and businesses who allow illegal immigrants to work for them or live in their properties.
And the government has expressed concern that China could use electric cars to spy on Britain. We'll be joined by former leader of the Conservative Party, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, for more on that.
And you can join in any of our discussions, of course, by emailing gbviews@gbnews.com or, of course, tweet us @gbnews.
Now, with mortgage rates now sitting above 5% for some homeowners, many Londoners are leaving for somewhat greener pastures in more affordable areas.
And it's not just London that's happening to, by the way. But anyway, today we're asking, has London become unlivable? Columnist and parliamentary sketch writer at The Guardian, Madeline Grant, says yes. The capital city is now unlivable. Meanwhile, former editor of The Daily Star and GB News presenter, friend of the show and all-round good egg, Londoner Dawn Neeson says London isn't unlivable and remains the best city in the world. Well, good morning to you both.
Morning. Good morning.
So let's kick off with you, shall we, Madeline? You're saying London is over. Why?
Well, firstly, I'm actually not from The Guardian. I want it to be known. I'm actually from The Telegraph.
Yeah,
yes.
who put that in? You're fired.
I was about to say you've got a new job.
Well, so to the debate in hand, look, I don't think London is I think there's lots of wonderful things to do here, but essentially, once upon a time, in the not too distant past, the understanding was that you did pay over the odds to live in London, but in exchange for that, you've got vibrant nightlife, you've got a lot of excitement and fun, and I actually think that recently a lot of the advantages that London used to have just kind of gone up in smoke. Nightlife really not good compared to many other big cities in Europe, and indeed other cities in the UK. You can have a much better night out in Liverpool or Manchester these days. It's very common to go even to a place like Soho and find that all the pubs are shutting up at 10 o'clock at night. And that's before you get to the way that life has been made more difficult for motorists by Sadiq Khan, the difficulty of travelling around the city, and just the astronomical price of rent, which has gone up. In fact, in 2022, the average rent went up by almost 20%. I think that there's such intense competition to live in London now that it's made it a very inhospitable place to people unless they have serious amounts of money behind them.
OK, Dawn, over to you. Inhospitable unless you've got lots and lots of money.
No, it's the best city in the world, come on. And if nightlife is all you've got to criticise, there really is, honestly, it's the best city in the world. But we've got culture, we've got history, we've got job availability, we've got higher wages, brilliant travel links. You can go out in any other place in the country, but you can't get home afterwards. In London, we've got night transport, we've got tubes that actually work throughout the night, sometimes not during the day, but through the night. And, you know, we've got green spaces, sport, music, diversity. It's one of the most accepting cities in the world, and it's not actually that expensive. There are many boroughs in London that are actually still affordable. It's just that, I'm sorry, Madeline, but millennials think they're a little bit below them, so they don't want to live there.
But there is a serious issue. London has soaring knife crime.
No, Bradford is the most...
we're talking about London has soaring knife crime. The mayor of London is about to charge the poorest motorists £12.50 a day
look, Sadiq,
to
the one
drive.
thing
Hang on. And then forcing people onto public transport where the pollution underground is far worse.
The one thing
there are like 20 people going for every single property.
Anyone would think it's your show, Martin. The one thing I would agree with is that Sadiq Khan, Madeline and I agree, Sadiq Khan is not good for London. OK, totally agree with that. But Bradford is the highest crime index in the UK. It's not London. Crime is going up all over the UK, not just London. So why are we demonising London on this one? The West Midlands is the current knife crime capital of the UK, so that's not London either. Cleveland actually is the most violent town in the UK. So why are we demonising London all the time? It's got so much more than anywhere else in the UK. It's not even the most violent city in Europe, by the way. Paris gives a run on that
And there's a common theme to all of the violence in those cities. That's a separate debate for another time.
I knew you'd say that. I was going to put money on that.
Madeline, come on, we just heard a passionate defence of London. But
well, I just bring it back to the pounds and pence. I mean, when I first moved to London, I think it's got demonstrably worse in a very short amount of time, and I think that the mayor has a lot to do with that, but particularly the housing crisis. When I first moved to London, I was earning less than 20 grand a year, but it was OK because my rent was like 500, 600 a month, which was obviously a lot of money, but it was fine. If you took on a bit of extra work, you could survive. And now I just genuinely don't know how someone on that income would possibly survive in London, where they would be paying, you know, just for a room, 800, 900 quid a month. Or else they're living so far out that they're then spending a fortune in commuting costs every day. You know, I think that the playing field has really changed in the last few years, and particularly for renters who are very vulnerable at the moment.
And it's not just in London that we see that. We did a report about there are 20 people going for every property in the northwest. A lot of this has been driven by huge immigration, of course. We have many more people chasing fewer and fewer properties.
Absolutely.
But it is particularly true in London. For example, you're OK. You're a born and bred Londoner. You bought and you will sell and you'll be comfortable with that. But how on earth are young people meant to get on the property ladder? How on earth are young people meant to get on the property ladder in London, where the price of a one-bedroom flat now is ridiculous? You can never afford to save up because you're spending all of your money on rent, as Madeline says. How can any young person ever afford to buy in London unless they've got the bank and mum and dad?
God blimey, Governor, I never had the bank and mum and dad for a start. I'm from East London.
But
when I was buying my property in London, it was OK. You could get 100% mortgages. The interest rates were 17%, much higher than now. Inflation was 26.9%, much higher than now.
Not when I bought.
But how much was the cost of
If you don't like it, go back where you're from then.
Hey?
If you don't like it, go back from where you're from.
I will do at some point. I will do. I think a lot of people are leaving London.
Property prices were a lot lower then, weren't they?
They were, but so were wages.
So you say it's totally in line with what young people are dealing with now?
I think young people... Look, I'm going to sound terribly ageist here, but I think young people have higher expectations than my generation did, than what we could afford. My generation, we weren't brought up to expect to buy our own homes. It wasn't a working-class London thing. We all rented back in the day. To own your own home, you were actually considerably wealthy. We didn't have those expectations now. So I think,
But I bet your rent was not costing 50% of your income, though, every month.
I can't honestly remember. To be fair to you, I can't honestly remember. But as I said, interest rates were higher. and inflation was higher. So it wasn't all, it's easy for your generation, you had it easy. It wasn't easy then, and look, I get, Madeline, it's not easy now at all. I completely understand that, and prices have gone up, and mortgage rates are going up, ridiculously so, because the bank keeps putting the interest up 14 times in a row. That's mad. Not even waiting for the figures to take effect. So I get that it's not easy now, but it wasn't easy then, and I think that we should count ourselves lucky that we do have a vibrant city like London that attracts tourists still and is the financial powerhouse of this country. Stop demonising it. There are far, far worse places in the UK and in the world.
All right, Madeline, is the expectation too much from the younger generation? Do we expect too much?
No, I don't think that's true. I think that money goes much less far in terms of where you can live, the kind of areas that you can live. I mean, I talk to my parents' generation, it was very standard for people just to be renting in what are now considered to be incredibly swanky districts of London. Like, young people don't expect that. I think what they expect is to maybe have a degree of security where they could live in a property for a year or two without constant worry that either the rent is skyrocketing or they're going to be turfed out altogether and have to look for a new place to live.
OK. Madeline Grant and Dawn Easton, thank you very much. And Madeline, please accept my humble and sincere apologies for saying you work for The Guardian.
That was the biggest insult this morning.
Yeah, it really was. If you'd said a different newspaper, I'd have kept my mouth shut, but it was as it's The Guardian.
Sorry. Let's move on now. OK, because NatWest has been accused of forcing customers towards a cashless society. We'll go through that headline and more as we look through today's papers on GB News, Britain's news channel. Please don't go anywhere.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But boom.
And action.
Sergeant read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 7:39. Let's bring you up to date now with today's front pages.
And we'll start with the Times, and the front page reads, Tories seek Plan B for Rwanda if policy fails.
And the Metro reports on Labour's confirmation that it will use barges to house asylum seekers too.
The Financial Times reports on European companies losing €100 billion due to sanctions on Russia.
And the Telegraph leads with bosses who hire illegal migrants will face ruinous fines.
And finally, the Star says to... Oh, you're going to have to help me with this one again.
To boldly do a logical captain. No, I don't get it either.
Yeah.
And those are your front pages. Still don't know what that one means.
No, we haven't quite cracked that one this morning, have we? Right, we're joined now by Christopher Biggins and Vineyard Taylor, who've been with us this morning, and they have been fantastic. We're going to continue right now. Biggins, let's go to page 5 of the Daily Mail.
Yes.
And this is about compensation for being convicted of a crime that you didn't commit.
2 decades he spent in prison as an innocent man, and he comes out. What would you want? Well, let's ask each of you. What would you want if you spent 2 decades in prison and you come out and you're not guilty?
At least £1 million a year.
What is saying?
A year. I agree.
At least £1 million a year.
I agree.
Because who's to say he couldn't have generated that without all this cloud over him? At least £1 million.
Also, he has a problem now with relationships. He was telling.
Of course.
Because of course everyone now, you know, even if you're not guilty, people think, well, perhaps he was, you know, with the fact that he raped someone.
And this is Andrew Malkinson, of course, and the story is the compensation deal. They were trying to take off money for bed and lodgings while he'd been in prison. They were trying to deduct his costs from his payout, despite the fact he was wrongly convicted. An outrageous story.
Who accused him? Who accused him of this, and who stood by this accusation for 2 decades, knowing that an innocent man was behind bars? Where are they in this story? I want to know, because that is a problem.
Yeah, compensation from them.
From them, and obviously the police force that convicted him.
No, it is an outrageous story, and I think, you know, I just don't understand how anybody could be in prison for 20 years and
not kill themselves.
Oh, well, that would be, yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly, you know. But I really want to know who put him behind bars, who accused him of this, and why haven't they been...
What do you think should be done in case... It's a thorny topic, so if somebody is wrongly accused and the evidence later on is proved to be false, do you think that person should be charged?
Something as life-destroying as rape, as a mother of 4 boys, I absolutely think if you are found out to wrongly accuse somebody of something as catastrophic as that, and basically you're putting other women's case in jeopardy as well, you should serve time behind bars.
Very, very
Can I ask a question which you might know? If you come out of prison and you serve your sentence for, say, 20 years and you are guilty and you come out of prison, do you then have to pay for your board and lodging in the prisons? Is that... You don't?
No, of course not. You're released from His Majesty's pleasure and you're then a citizen.
Exactly.
And you then...
So then why were they asking for money?
It's a fair point.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, they would say he wasn't meant to be there in the first place.
Well,
that's exactly...
You're not wrong. You don't need to tell him
that.
So they said, even though we put you in jail, we want all the money back for your food and board.
Because it was a mistake.
Because it was a mistake. It's preposterous.
Really ridiculous.
Let's move on to something a bit more light-hearted. What we can all relate to.
Wholesome.
How grandparents helped gardening skills grow on us.
Right, so I'm bringing this up because I think it's going to be my new thing, gardening. I go into phases of things. I'm doing a lot of running and stuff, and now I think I'm going to go into gardening. A friend of mine who I used to party hard really well with, she has got into gardening. She's got these raised beds, and she sends me pictures of her courgettes. So this is like how we've moved on over the past 20 years. And I think it elevates that hormone serotonin, which is your cosy, happy hormone. So it's going to be my new thing. Now, my mum passed away, and she was a keen gardener, so I'm going to have to be self-taught on this one. But I was just talking during the break, and if I buy, say, basil from Sainsbury's or wherever, I literally bring it home and it's flourishing, and within 24 hours, it's like, it's dead.
Withered.
Yeah. It's withered and died. So I think it's something I want to get my head around, because I think the amount of pesticides and things that we have in our food chain anyway, I can mitigate that. Not to say that I'm going to feed my family very well with my single courgette, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try and do this. And I think, I think it's a good way to keep fit, actually, as you get older.
Well, you can grow big courgettes, though.
You can, but I mean...
Poor boys, though, they'll be hungry.
They will be hungry. Do you garden at all?
No, we've got a tiny little garden in London. We've got a front garden and a back garden. The back garden is like a dining room, really. It's an extra room. And we love it, and it's gorgeous. But, no, we have a girl who comes in to do it. But I would love to move, though, into the country and start gardening. My partner, Neil, loves gardening, so it would be...
We moved into the countryside out of London. I did 25 years in London. During lockdown, I moved up to Lancashire with the idea that I would be gardening. We have, on our little housing estate, we have the worst garden by far. It is terrible. I mean, really bad. My husband and I really need to pull up ourselves.
But also, aside from gardening, I think there is definitely something in this. Like, as a parent, when I cook, I get my kids involved. I said, right, here's how we make a white sauce. Here's how we do a spag bowl. The missus bakes with them. If I do some DIY, if I get my jigsaw out, my angle grinder, I go, come on, Sonny, come here, and I make them watch. Because I'd learnt how to repair bikes, motorbikes from my dad. I picked up those skills, DIY. It's a generational duty to pass on.
Yeah, you're right, and it generates a feeling of confidence that you can survive on your own without your parents. My kids cook, actually. I mean, bearing in mind, it's just scrambled egg and stuff. I mean, I'm no baker and I'm no chef, but my husband really likes cooking, and he's a builder by trade, so we've always got actually very dangerous equipment in the house. Ever since they were little, we've had drills plugged into the wall.
And have the boys picked up tips from your husband?
Yeah, I think so. I think they do, just like osmosis. They just learn it, you know?
I think that's what this story is all about, though, isn't it? It's what you see is what you learn.
Yeah.
So I've got lovely recipes from my granny.
That's
really good chicken stuffing.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
And my great auntie Vi's trifle is something else.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I'll do it one day for you.
Or is it strawberry?
No, you shouldn't have real fruit in a trifle.
Do you go soggy?
No. What you do is you do the sponge cakes and you put jam, raspberry jam, in the middle of it.
Sherry?
Oh, sherry. Then masses of sherry on the top, and then custard. And burnt custard is the best because it gets it's thicker. And then cream, and then you decorate with walnuts and cherries.
Ooh, lovely.
Beautiful. We've had your big courgettes, and we've had your trifle.
Sherry trifle.
Family secrets there.
Yeah, do get in touch with your family secrets, your family recipes.
Yes.
The ones that have been handed through the generations. I'm sure that will get you going this morning. gbviews@gbnews.com. OK, Biggins, let's stay with you and the theme of food, actually. The Times. This is about Barcelona apparently banning solo diners.
Yeah, I know. It's a very interesting thing, this, because I'm not good at eating on my own. If I'm in a hotel, I will go, or abroad, I will go to my room.
Me too.
And have room service. I find it intimidating. And people say, oh, take a book. Well, I don't want to take a book. I mean, I want to have conversation, and I want to, enjoy the whole atmosphere. And I don't find that on my own.
No. I'm the opposite. I find it... I feel like if I have a book and I'm in a restaurant on my own, or I see someone like that, I instantly think, oh, they must be very sophisticated and intelligent. Yes.
Well, you are a guru, so I understand that.
Yeah, of course.
You forgot that.
Funnily enough, I was just talking to my dad about it, because he's come over to stay with me for the week, and I've put him in a hotel because our house is just far too small. And he goes, I'm really bored and lonely. I said, get a book, maybe one of mine, and read it over dinner, and you'll look really intelligent and sophisticated. He's like, no, I'm going to come to yours for my tea.
It's an interesting story like this one, because the reason they say they're doing it is because for a table for two, if one person sits down, they're losing like a plate.
Yeah.
And, in a way, playing devil's advocate, you know, through lockdowns, when a lot of people didn't bother to turn up or couldn't even get customers in at all, they're trying to maximise their revenue. So if there's 2 places, they want 2 people. Have they got a point?
Yeah, I mean, there is a business angle to it as well. And another thing is, if I go for dinner, because I don't drink alcohol, they go, oh, and I take all the kids, they're like, oh, God, 6 of you who don't drink. This is awful, you know, so...
You don't spend enough.
No, I don't. I'm not a good investment.
But I think the people who do, and I know a lot of people who don't mind eating on their own, they should be accommodated. I think it's wrong that a restaurant turns around and says, no, just one, that's not good enough.
You could put them at the bar. The bar area is quite good.
I quite like.
I mean, I used to drink alone at the bar rather a lot back in the day.
But that's quite nice. That's quite social as well, isn't it? To sit at the bar and watch everything going on.
It is. Great story you've got here now, Davinia. The ongoing cancel culture around J.K. Rowling. What's happened now?
I was quite surprised to see she's been airbrushed from its Hall of Fame at the Harry Potter exhibition over her gender-critical views. And I'm like, how on earth do you cancel the person whose brilliant mind orchestrated this wonderful world that I know so many children have enjoyed, and she opened the doors to so many children reading, actually picking up a book, you know, and she's been cancelled by this. And what was it that she actually said that was so controversial? It was just that biology is biology, and that's it. I mean, that is bizarre to me, that you go against actual sort of real science. You know, I mean, it's okay to have many views and invite people who are transitioning, and of course, but to cancel the author is crazy, and to just I mean, that in itself seems to be really derogatory.
But the stars of those films, those young kids who made millions, have gone against her as well. I think it's outrageous. I really do think, you know, you can't have that story and an exhibition without the writer.
I know. I mean,
and
would you
she's so
cancel Enid
famous.
Blyton because of her beliefs way back when?
Yes.
I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
I know.
I mean, everything changes through society. We can't just cancel things like they didn't exist, because you don't learn, you don't develop, you don't grow. And it's not like she's ferocious, you know, it's not like she's like some nasty person. She just had an opinion.
But do you think in the fullness of time, because, you know, let's face it, she has enough money to be insulated from being cancelled. No, it wouldn't matter if she didn't earn a penny ever again. But in the fullness of time, I think, see what you guys think, that she'll be proven to have been a pioneer on this conversation. She's forced it into the arena politically. She's forced it into the media. We're here talking about it now, simply for saying women's safe spaces, such as prisons and hospitals and changing rooms, should be protected from biological men, women's sports. We're having these conversations. She's actually, I think, on the right side of history. What's your...
I agree. I totally agree. I think she's, you know, she talks a lot of sense. She's not stupid.
No, she's definitely...
You know, by any means. I mean, and I've met her, she's a gorgeous, lovely woman.
But then some people would say she's a transphobe, she's bigoted, she's...
How can you be a transphobe if you just the reasons you've listed, if that's what she's protecting women who are physically inferior. I mean, I'm sure she's not got anything against people who are transitioning, which is probably one of the most traumatic things any teen probably would have to go through. But of course there's evil people out there who'll take advantage of the loophole and for ill-gotten gains get into women-only spaces and do horrific things to women and girls. You know, we can't just you know, buffer around it. You know, you're right, if she's putting her head up to be counted, you know, maybe it's a conversation that should continue to be had. And I'm sure there'll be some safeguarding around those sort of issues. But it seems a shame to cancel someone's imagination. You know,
but bring her back, put her back into the exhibition. You know, it's ridiculous.
Well, there might be a campaign for it now, Big. We'll have to.
I might start it.
Yeah, you might start it. Let's go to a really sad story now, shall we? In the Daily Mail about a 12-year-old boy who was killed in a hit and run.
On the M62, I mean, I don't understand, and I don't think at the moment the police understand either this story, because why was he crossing the M62? I mean, you know, there seems to be no reason for it.
No.
And, you know, anybody crossing a motorway it stands to be killed.
Of course, yes. It's a
You know,
way
it's
to commit suicide.
bizarre.
That's how you kill yourself.
I mean, was he trying to get? Was his home across the road from the? I mean.
And the chap's in custody now. It's a hit and run.
Yes.
I mean, imagine what he's going through.
Oh my God,
I
terrifying.
mean, the guilt, the fear,
Yeah.
and the poor parents. I mean, what on earth happened here?
Yeah.
The
I know.
M62 is like Yorkshire, Lancashire, isn't it?
Yeah, if a car breaks,
it's your way.
Our car recently broke down, and you just have to get the kids out of the car because the car can be hit, of course, because sometimes lorry drivers think the hard shoulder is in use, things like that. Get them onto the sort of refuge behind the barrier. Do not ever set foot onto a motorway.
No.
I know.
You just don't. Shall we move on to another story? Davinia.
Oh, yeah.
Triathletes fall sick after sea swimming.
Well, this story is awful. Yeah, this is really sad because I'm really into cold water swimming. Christopher, you can come with me next time.
Thank you, Dad.
The trouble is, we're an island and we've got the advantage of having these really cold seas around us, and they're all polluted and people are getting sick. So these triathletes have got things like diarrhea, E. coli, because of our rubbish water system has polluted our seas, and it's not fair. We're an island and we're wet for a reason. It is a scandal.
Absolutely.
And I filter my tap water now.
I think we have to leave it there,
Thank you.
Davinia and Biggins. I'm afraid we just ran out of time.
Oh.
Move on. Thanks, that was excellent. We'll see you again.
Super.
Yes.
You might.
One more next hour. Thank you very much.
Now here's Rachel Ayres with your Monday forecast.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. The weekend was unsettled for many, but let's have a look at what we've got to start the new working week. After a bit of a cool night, plenty of clear skies around this morning, allowing for early brightness, but cloud will soon bubble up, allowing showers to develop, and these could be heavy, especially across northern and eastern parts of Scotland, where we might also see the odd thunderstorm. Though dry for many across the south with plenty of sunshine, so feeling pretty pleasant here with highs of 22 or even locally 23 in the southeast. Now into this evening, and those showers will slowly start to ease away to allow for some clear spells to develop ahead of this area of cloud and rain pushing in from the southwest, bringing outbreaks of rain and drizzle into the early hours of Tuesday. It'll be a clearer night there across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, where we'll see temperatures dropping quite widely in rural areas into the single figures. Now, throughout the rest of Tuesday, this rain and cloud will erratically make its way eastwards. This will mostly be quite light rain and drizzle, though there could be the odd heavier burst in there, but bringing quite a dull and gloomy day for much of England and Wales. Northern Ireland, Scotland and the far north of England remaining dry and sunny, so feeling pleasant here. Breezy along English Channel coasts, but still seeing highs of 22.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
And thanks for that, Rachel. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll get all the latest on the Bibby Stockholm barge and whether the government will follow through with their plans to house 500 asylum seekers on the vessel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Monday, the 7th of August. Today, the government will push ahead with plans for asylum seekers to arrive on the UK's first migrant barge in the coming days. That's despite critics dubbing the vessel a death trap.
The Home Secretary has announced plans to clamp down on landlords and businesses who take on illegal migrants. But do we have the police resources to follow through with these proposals?
Elsewhere, ministers have issued a stark warning that China could use imported electric cars to spy on Britons. We'll be speaking to the former leader of the Conservative Party, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
And Elon Musk has pledged to pay the legal bills of those who have been treated unfairly by their employers for posting something on his social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter. This begs the question, should you be sacked for your social media posts?
And here's your latest weather forecast.
The weekend saw plenty of wet and windy weather, but what does the weather have in store as we start the new week? Join me later for a full forecast with all the details.
Good morning, I'm Martin Daubney.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News. Loads of you getting in touch this morning. Thank you so much for your company. We had a fantastic report earlier from Will Hollis about a pub in the Midlands called the Old Bulldog. And PETA, the animal rights charity, they want to rename it to the Old Mutt. They say that calling it the Old Bulldog is encouraging people to buy a breed that has breathing issues. Lots of you getting in touch on that one.
Yeah, lots of passionate debate. David is saying the British Bulldog breed has been around since the 13th century. Fair point. Long-standing part of British fabric cited.
Yeah, Phil says, surely calling the pub the Old Bulldog actually encourages people to look for the older version of the dog, which is a healthy version, not the current really well-bred trend. The PETA Group should consider this aspect as it makes more sense than it might appear.
Yeah, and we sort of took the lady to task from PETA, saying surely a pub name isn't going to change anything. Why are you trying to cancel it? And Elaine seems to agree. She says there's nothing wrong with having a pub called the Old Bulldog. It wouldn't make people go and buy a bulldog, would it?
No, but Sean says the guest from PETA is correct when she talks about the health of bulldogs, because you didn't believe her, did you? He goes on to say, however, PETA are barking up the wrong tree by targeting a pub to change its name. They should be tackling breeders instead of this virtue signalling nonsense.
Yeah, and I think, I think she made some fair points. Nobody likes an animal to be suffering because it's been bred on and bred on and bred on till it has these kind of facial features which make it hard to breed. But I just think she was selling a doomsday scenario across the entire breed. There are many, many wonderful, wonderful bulldogs out there who don't live like that. That's the point I was trying to make.
Well, my issue was actually the financial one. They were offering to pay this pub to rename their pub. But don't you think that money could be better used elsewhere? I mean, to actually save some animals rather than rename a pub? I mean, I don't know, if I was an animal rights charity, I think that's probably where I'd want to put my money. Yeah. But do get in touch on that story or any of the other stories. Oh, I'll just give you one on sunbeds because this has made us laugh this morning. It's the headline of the day. Hands off. Apparently it's the Germans versus the Brits at resorts all over Europe this summer trying to get their sunbeds. Sandra's been in touch. Good morning to you, Sandra, and says, I've just been to Pathos in Cyprus. You need to put towels on sunbeds there by 5:30 a.m. or you will not get one.
Yeah, that is a bit early, 5:30, even for me. I think
that's the middle of the night, Martin.
Yeah,
it's holiday.
A lot of people are getting home at that time, but I would say 7 a.m. Yeah, you'd be. But that's why you're not into this story, isn't it?
That's why I'm not into this story. I'm asleep.
You're not even getting home until the rest of the people are getting up.
I'm asleep till lunchtime, so it doesn't bother me.
Stuff.
But yeah, get in touch, please, on sunbeds. Who are the ones who are the biggest culprits for stealing a sunbed? Is it the Germans? Is it us Brits? Do let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com.
OK, on to our top story now. The first group of migrants are expected to be housed on the Bibby Stockholm barge in the coming days, despite opposition from local groups in Portland.
Yes, the barge, set to accommodate 500 male asylum seekers, arrived at Portland Harbour last month after being tugged from Falmouth.
Let's find out more from our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Good morning to you, Olivia. So there's been huge resistance from both sides of the spectrum down in Portland. The locals who don't want 500 military-aged men there. Also the anti-racists who correctly point out it will overwhelm the health service down there. Yet the government is doggedly pressing on, expected to arrive this week. What's the latest?
Absolutely. This has been a struggle from the get-go for the government. As you said in that introduction there, the barge arrived in the middle of July. We're now well into August and we're only expecting the very first migrants to be arriving this week. At first, we're expecting to see about 50. And as you said, the barge will eventually accommodate about 500. But of course, this isn't the end of the struggle for the government. At the moment, there are 50,000 migrants being held in hotels around the country at great expense to the taxpayer. It's costing about £6 million a day. And there is a backlog of 172,000 migrants. Now, even when the Bibby Stockholm is at full capacity, we are only expecting it to house 500 migrants. I mean, that's well under 0.5% of that backlog. So the government has a long way to go. And of course, next time they try and open a barge, they will expect a huge amount of opposition. The residents in Portland are furious about this. Of course, the migrants who will be housed on this barge are all young single men, they're not families, etc. And there are safety concerns, people worried about their children being out around young single men who are being left on this barge. Meanwhile, of course, the government is facing, as you said, pressure from the other side, if you like, from those who say that it is inhumane to house migrants on a barge like this. So I think we can expect a lot more pressure for the government as they try and enact this policy. The glimmer of light for the government, though, is that, of course, the public is actually very behind this move. The public is keen for any move that clamps down on illegal immigration. And in fact, Labour is now saying that they have seen the focus groups, they've seen the polling, and Labour isn't actually attacking the government from a left-wing angle. Labour isn't saying that it's inhumane to house migrants on barges. In fact, Labour is now saying they would house migrants on barges, at least at the beginning of their tenure in office. So the hope for the government is that with public support behind them, they will manage to roll out this policy on a wider scale. But with massive local opposition, it's going to be very, very difficult.
I mean, as you say, Olivia, this is a big election issue. The public are behind tackling illegal migration. How do you think then the public will react to the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, announcing today that fines are to be tripled for employers and landlords who allow illegal migrants to work for them and live in their properties?
Well, in terms of a policy, the policy impact, it feels like very low-hanging fruit for the government. The Home Secretary has said today that she wants to make it not only morally repugnant for landlords to house illegal migrants, but also financially ruinous. Now, that sort of language will play very, very well with the public, who we know are on board with, for example, the Rwanda policy and other policies intended to crack down on this problem. So it will play well. The question, of course, is whether the Home Secretary actually has the resources to enact this policy. We know that there are already migrants being housed around the country by landlords illegally, and at the moment they seem to be getting away with it, possibly through a lack of adequate policing. So it's an easy win in terms of rhetoric, but whether the Home Secretary actually has the power behind her to be able to carry it out is another question.
OK, Olivia Utley, our political correspondent, really good to see you this morning. Thank you very much for bringing us up to date.
Now, ministers have warned that electric cars from China imported into the UK to reach net zero targets could be used to spy on Brits.
Yes, some in government fear they could be used to take photographs and even recordings for the benefit of the Chinese Communist Party.
Let's speak now to former Tory leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. Thanks for joining us, Sir Duncan-Smith. This is a concerning story, isn't it? Because it's foreign technology coming in, spying on ways, taking photographs, listening to audio. How concerned should Britons be about this?
Well, very concerned, but there's a wider issue here, which is part of this, which is that China itself is now breaks the WTO rules, uses slave labour, produces these cars subsidised massively by the banks. It's going to swamp the UK with these cheap electric cars, both putting our own industry out of business. But at the same time, then, alongside this, they produce all the batteries that are used in China, all done, by the way, through using huge amounts of fossil fuels, burning really nasty coal without any restrictions. And so, you know, it's a tokenistic concept for us to think that by 2030 we should all be electric, when in fact that electric car basis is produced using massive amounts of fossil fuels. So we need to delay the 2030 target to give our own industry time to come up to the mark on this. And we need to be very careful about what we do with China. China uses slave labor and will put these devices into batteries, does already, and into cars as well. And that means that they will end up being able to track what we do. About a year ago, the Downing Street had to, we understand, strip out some of their cars looking for these devices and found them. Tracking, can you believe it? The Prime Minister and co. So the reality is for us that this is a threat to us, and we shouldn't go down this road quietly allowing China to dominate this market for us.
You've been concerned about this issue for a long time, haven't you? You called the government's obsession with electric cars dangerous in 2021. What is worrying you about this technology? Is it, in part, the speed at which this is all developing and how difficult it will be to regulate it?
Well, lots and lots of things are of concern. I mean, the fact is that most of our taxpayers are receiving a kind of punishment beating en route into this because the taxes, the green levies, have risen dramatically. What I'm concerned about is in the desperate search to meet a target, we end up basically stripping our own industry of their capability and making sure that people are left with the Chinese cars to buy. That's it. And the reality is that's where they're going. They are now at the moment, all their battery companies, and we use Chinese batteries endlessly, they're setting up as car companies. And they're under the control of the state. They all have to be regulated by the state in China, and they're massively subsidized. So it's not even a fair market. The point I'm trying to make is, look, the West needs to recognize that China poses a significant threat to the free world. We need to be able to join together and say to them, no, we're not going to be dominated by you in this area. We're going to give ourselves the time to be able to make sure that we can do this using proper, viable labor, paid proper wages, and doing the job that is required, and not just rushing to this in the hope that somehow we'll gain some brownie points. from some people who think that we ought to kill off any diesel or petrol cars. The fact is that we can continue to use these. Europe has gone to 2035. America has gone to 2035. I see no reason why we should rush to 2030 to become a kind of offshoot of China.
Well, Sir Ian, you're making some great common sense points there, which I know will land very well with GB News viewers. They feel very much under the cosh, having to sell their cars. They don't want electric cars in the main because they're so expensive. What about things like gas boilers, though? They're being clamped down on. We're being charged £12.50 a day to drive our cars. Surely the Conservative Party, if they got on a real front foot on the net zero issue and proved to voters they could save pounds and pence in their pockets and purses, that would help you win the next general election. When can we see some common sense on this to help save British taxpayers' money?
Well, I think the government is coming around to this issue because Uxbridge taught them a very significant lesson. And actually, by the way, it shocked the Labour Party too and the Liberals. The reality is that ULEZ in London is being imposed on Outer London, when Outer London doesn't have any need for it because the air quality is high. I'll give you an example. The Transport for London report independently said to the mayor that imposing ULEZ on Outer London will make negligible, if any, difference in air quality at all. So he's doing it because he needs to raise money. That's what that's all about, hiding behind net zero. We shouldn't be doing this. So when the public was given a chance to vote on this in Uxbridge, they said, no, we're not going to have this done in our name. We're not going to be punished just for this idea that the mayor has been so utterly useless in running London, that he has to now drag more money off us, pensioners, etc., unable to get their cars in the future, having to pay just to get inside their car. This doesn't make any sense at all. So we need to have a proper discussion about this. The reality is, including the gas boilers, it's very, very difficult. And it's not that efficient or relatively cheap to start this whole idea of air boilers, as it were, that actually produce enough heat to be able to allow your house to be heated properly using electricity. This doesn't really work, as everybody said it did. Now, I'm in favour of cleaning up the environment, in favour of making sure that we do what we can in terms of net zero. But what I'm not in favour of is punishing people en route to that, and for that matter, destroying our own domestic industry. Every bit of these things is mostly built in China. And by the way, the solar arrays that populate our fields at the moment, most of these polysilicates that are critical to the working of those are mined from Xinjiang in China, where they use slave labor. How much do you have to say to those self-righteous people that wander around preaching to us about just stop oil, etc.? What do you care about people whose lives are miserable out in China because they are being driven and beaten into these areas by people who want to get rid of them using slave labor? I have to say to people, think again, will you, and care a little bit about those other people that are being destroyed so that you can feel self-righteous about your own beliefs.
Yeah, really, really interesting point. Looking ahead to the near future, how would you feel, Sir Ian, about investing and developing in our own electric car industry so we can buy British when it comes to our electric cars and stay well clear of China for the reasons that you've been listing this morning? Or do you have a genuine fear about the technology and how easy it is to be bugged?
Well, just separate those two issues. The first is, yes, I'm absolutely in favour of our industry being able to produce low emission, if zero emission cars. Hydrogen is another area that we had a global lead on. And the government needs to focus as much on that as they do on electric, because in truth, that would allow our industry to be preeminent. And I think that's important. We're not alone, by the way. The whole of Europe and the United States is facing the same challenge as us. And they've taken the practical result of actually moving back the start date for the end of new sales of petrol and diesel. We're the only ones sitting on 2030 now. They've moved back to 2035. Now, I'm asking simply for us to do the same as them so that we can actually end up getting this properly organized and properly done. It cannot be net zero at any cost. What we have to be, if we're going towards net zero, it has to be done in a way that we can sustain it here in the free world, in the UK, and not allow even greater dominance by China. Those little micro units you're talking about, they exist, and they're in most, if not all, of the batteries that China produces, and also the cars. And you know, that gives them great knowledge, great power, and we need to make sure that doesn't happen.
So Ian Smith, thank you for joining us today on GB News Breakfast. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah, really wide-reaching conversation there, actually, about the green agenda and if it's the right way to go and if we go for it in 2030 with the banning of petrol and diesel cars. I mean, Sri and Duncan Smith saying, why are we putting the pressure on? The EU has the date of 2035. Let's give ourselves that time.
I think he spoke a lot of common sense. I know will resonate well with viewers out there, but, and I think there's a big but, net zero, to me, feels like a new Brexit for the Conservative Party. It's divided the party into, it lands badly in those shire seats where they're more environmentally switched on, more at risk of losing to the Liberal Democrats. But it lands very well in the red wall. And it's, again, it's down to the concept versus the cost. We all want to save the planet. We all want cleaner air. When we find out it's 10 grand for a boiler, when we find out we've got to scrap our car, when we find out it's 12.5 quid to drive every day, people start to question it. And I just wish we'd have some clarity so voters had a choice, Ellie.
It so depends, though. We had a guest on the other day who has got solar panels on his roof, and he was saying he doesn't pay anything for hot water. So he said, yeah, it's that upfront cost, but now when everybody else is struggling with energy, and obviously with the war in Ukraine, we've all seen energy bills go up, he hasn't had that problem.
Yeah, I guess.
So it so depends on where you're at with that.
He had the choice. It was his choice to put that in.
And he made that investment.
Which is great. But if you're told, like in Scotland, the SNP is saying you have to have a heat pump or you can't sell your house, £10,000 minimum, that feels like too much stick and not enough carrot.
Yeah, well, do let us know what you thought of that interview there with Sir Ian Duncan Smith at GBViews at gbnews.com. But first, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
And people who have been wrongfully convicted of crimes will no longer have their living costs docked from their compensation payments. That's according to new guidance issued by Justice Secretary Alex Chalk and follows the controversy sparked by the jailing of Andrew Malkinson, who spent 17 years behind bars for a crime he did not commit.
Almost 100,000 more school leavers could miss out on top A-level grades this year. Experts have warned that they are unlikely to fall back to 2019 levels as teachers developed a taste for awarding top grades in some subjects during the pandemic, which markers will be reluctant to relinquish.
And new research suggests that firms are hesitant to recruit new staff because of concerns over the economic situation. The Recruitment and Employment Confederation reported a fall in permanent staff appointments, blaming a weaker economic climate and reduced market confidence.
Now here's Rachel Ayres with your all-important Monday forecast.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. The weekend was unsettled for many, but let's have a look at what we've got to start the new working week. After a bit of a cool night, plenty of clear skies around this morning, allowing for early brightness, but cloud will soon bubble up, allowing showers to develop, and these could be heavy, especially across northern and eastern parts of Scotland, where we might also see the odd thunderstorm. Though dry for many across the south with plenty of sunshine, so feeling pretty pleasant here with highs of 22 or even locally 23 in the southeast. Now into this evening, and those showers will slowly start to ease away to allow for some clear spells to develop ahead of this area of cloud and rain pushing in from the southwest, bringing outbreaks of rain and drizzle into the early hours of Tuesday. It'll be a clearer night there across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, where we'll see temperatures dropping quite widely in rural areas into the single figures. Now, throughout the rest of Tuesday, this rain and cloud will erratically make its way eastwards. This will mostly be quite light rain and drizzle, though there could be the odd heavier burst in there, but bringing quite a dull and gloomy day for much of England and Wales. Northern Ireland, Scotland and the far north of England remaining dry and sunny, so feeling pleasant here. Breezy along English Channel coasts, but still seeing highs of 22.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel. After the break, we'll be debating whether people should be sacked for what they post on their social media. Don't go anywhere.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
Please
stop.
Should I just shut up? Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go. There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, the big green, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The time is 8:25. Still lots to come on today's programme.
And the Shadow International Trade Secretary Nick Thomas-Symonds will be joining us to discuss what Labour are going to do about the migrant crisis if they get hold of the keys to number 10.
One council in Sutton is under fire after introducing higher parking charges for people who use cash to pay. Is that fair or are you outraged? We'll be discussing that a little bit later.
Yeah, don't kill cash, obviously, is the GB News campaign, and that strikes to the heart of that issue. You can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.com, or, of course, you can tweet us at GB News.
Now, Elon Musk has announced that X, formerly known as Twitter, will pay the legal bills for anyone treated unfairly by their employer for their activity on Twitter.
And in today's debate, we are asking, should people be sanctioned or even sacked for what they post on social media? Dr. Brian Harris welcomes the move. Meanwhile, Hannah O'Donoghue Hobbs says no, people should be held accountable. They both join us now. So shall we start with you, Dr. Harris? Give us your take on this.
this looks to me like a potential game changer. I think it's part of Musk's plan to make Twitter, or X, the ultimate free speech platform. He's saying not only will you have free speech in using it, that's what he's promising, but also he'll pay the bills if you get sanctioned for exercising that free speech. Now, it seems like an extravagant measure, and obviously we need to see whether he makes good on it, but I think it's definitely needed. So the Free Speech Union sees an enormous number of cases of employees being punished for something they've said on social media, and usually X. And this can include, pretty old stuff, comments from a long time ago, sometimes comments that have been dredged up, deliberately in a sort of, targeted attempt to harm someone's reputation. So I think this will be a real corrective. This will be a wake-up call, I think, to HR departments who are massively overestimating what is your boss's, your employer's business. A huge amount of what goes on Twitter has got nothing to do with your job. It's got nothing to do with the employment relationship. And it won't feasibly harm your employer's business. And I think that needs to be the test. And that's what they're getting wrong at the moment.
OK, Hannah, let's bring you in at that point. What do you make then of what Dr. Bryn Harris was saying, that a large proportion of what you see on Twitter has actually got nothing to do with your employer?
I think that unfortunately when I work with anyone, when lots of brands, businesses employ people, they do search the person online, whether it's Google, Twitter, any kind of social platform. So if you then are putting out things that maybe don't align with their values or their brand beliefs or to affect their reputation, then it is going to affect you working with them, I feel.
Yeah, but don't you find, though, Hannah, that what happens oftentimes is that people who don't like you, it could be for nefarious reasons, it could just be because they want to get rid of you and they want your job. They can go trawling through your social media history, the offence archaeology we hear so much about, and that's not fair. People are entitled to have a point of view on things which you may not agree with, and that surely should not cost them their jobs.
Yeah, I just think if you put it out there, then that's the risk that you're going to take. If you have maybe controversial opinions or something that isn't going to work, well, you're not going to have a good time working with that person if they then don't agree with your values. I think it's just something that it's the way the world works. I know anything I tweet, anything I put on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, it's going to come up when you look for me, which is what we do all the time now.
OK, Dr. Bryn, I want to bring you back in at that point. Where is the line for you? Because obviously you stand up for free speech. You believe in it wholeheartedly. When does it cross the line into hate speech, into racism, into homophobia? Where is the line for you? Or do you think people should just be able to tweet whatever they like?
No, I think there does have to be a line. And the answer, I'm afraid, it's a bit of a typically fiddly one, is it will depend on the fact, very case to case. But I think well, first of all, one thing we can definitely rule out is that your employer is not entitled to fidelity to their values. Your employer buys your time, it buys your labour, it does not buy your soul. It doesn't, we do not owe obedience to some sort of nebulous, rather vaguely stated body of values. So I think we can say that is very much one side of the line. I think as a rule of thumb, the proper test that certainly the employment tribunal should be using is, has this tweet damaged the employment relationship such that it can't go on, or perhaps that it couldn't go on without some sort of correction, like a warning or something like that. So, that would mean that the employee has said something which is really likely to damage business, to damage custom, to make it impossible or very difficult for that employee to continue working, to rub along with their colleagues. Now, what we're seeing is this extremely risk-averse approach where they think anything said on Twitter is as public as writing it on the side of Big Ben, and it's not. and this assumption that anything mildly fruity or spicy is going to bring the world falling down around their heads, and that's where we need a sense of caution and a sense of caution. Hopefully, that's what Musk's move is going to help do.
Hannah, you want to reply to that?
Yeah, I understand that you are being paid for your time and services, but I think at the same time, if you're representing a brand in any way, it has to make sense. It has to work both ways. That if a client, customer was to get in touch with me and say this person that works for you has these kind of views, it would affect my money, my business. So it wouldn't be something that would work.
I mean, it's really interesting, Hannah, your job, because when you're connecting brands with influencers, you actually have to do the digging, don't you? You have to go through influencers' posts to check that whatever they're posting is in line with that brand.
Yeah, and we've had big relationships fall apart because of something they might have tweeted, might have posted, or might have even interacted with online. Can really affect an influencer's career and the kind of brands that they're able to work with in the future. So having that footprint that's kind of not clean as a whistle, but you're proud of everything that you've put out there and you can back up whatever you've said, whatever you've posted online, I think it's vital.
OK, Dr. Bryn Harris and Hannah O'Donoghue Hobbs, thank you for joining us on GB News this morning on this fascinating debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you.
It's an interesting one, that, because if you're not careful, there'd be nobody left that could be employed, because we've all been a bit frisky at some point, haven't we? I mean, it's just the way it is. And also, I've got a big question. How the heck is Elon Musk going to bankroll this? I mean, there could be millions of people getting in touch with him.
He has got billions, to be fair.
Yeah.
If he wanted to put his money where his mouth is.
Or is it just a big PR stunt?
Well, I think there's probably a bit of that as well, isn't there? I mean, when he took over Twitter, now X, he said it was all about protecting free speech. So this is him putting his money where his mouth is. He's saying, I'll protect people from what they want to post online.
And it does have very serious implications. There are 125,000 non-crime hate incidents in the UK now, and that is when the police get involved in social media posts. I think that's a step too far. They should be out there policing streets and not policing tweets.
Yeah, well, you will have a view on that at home, so do get in touch with us this morning. gbnews@gbnews.com. Now, summer is due to make a comeback. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But will it just be a flash in the pan? Well, we'll tell you about that in just a moment. Stay with us. This is Britain's News Channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's News Channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, a pub landlord has accused animal rights group PETA of wokery after they demand that he change the name of his boozer.
Yes, Mike Newton, the owner of the Old Bulldog, revealed that he'd received a letter from the animal welfare charity urging him to change the name of his pub to the Old Mutt because the current name encourages people to buy sickness-prone breeds. Well, our Midlands reporter Will Hollis has more.
A proper British boozer with a proper British name. The Old Bulldog. A name that's now been splashed across the national news. And all because of this bulldog, Atticus. Mike and his wife Laurie rescued him.
If you look closely into his mouth, come on, sweetie, you can see that his teeth have been ground down with an angle grinder, which is usually a sign that he was a bait dog in the dog fighting.
When Mike bought the Sea Lion, a humble corner pub in Stoke-on-Trent, he fancied a new name and thought Atticus's breed was perfect. But not everyone agrees. Animal rights group PETA reckons it glorifies brachiophilic breeds of dog, like bulldogs and pugs that develop breathing difficulties and other health issues because of their squash snouts and skull shape. They sent Mike a letter telling him to scrap the name.
This is a letter on my phone, and essentially it says what we want to do is to get rid of the name, the Old Bulldog, replace it with the Old Mutt. Well, I was really quite cross about it because I felt that it was intrusive, it was patronising, and it was also an attack on a cherished national symbol, the bulldog, which we love in this country. It was an attack on small business.
PETA, which stands for People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, says that promoting breeds with breathing impairments normalises their suffering and encourages others to get them.
The name of a pub is not going to influence anyone in what dog they choose to buy. And that was pretty much their reasoning.
They say they'd even pay to help rename the pub to the Old Mutt, which they think will go down better with locals.
Why should animal rights get involved in it? It's nothing to do with them, what the name of a pub is.
People are going to have the dog if they want the dog, if they love the breed of the dog. It was called the Sea Lion before, so did that encourage people to keep sea lions? No.
Mike, who's a Conservative parliamentary candidate, says the name is staying.
Well, there's obviously a woke agenda globally on many fronts, isn't there? But, you know, here in the Midlands, then they've met the match because we're not changing the name of the pub. You know, we love our bulldogs and we're not backing down on this.
The Stoke pub was renamed once. Doing it twice, well, that would be barking mad.
Nice dog, nice pub.
Will Hollis, GB News, in Stoke-on-Trent.
Oh, that is a fantastic report. You
Yeah.
cannot get Will Hollis out of a pub. He loves the pub, that boy.
That's what Mike Newton, the governor of the Old Bulldog. If it all falls through in the pub trade, that guy is a textbook Alan Partridge impersonator back of the net. He looks like him. He sounds like him. He was thoroughly complimented. What a great story. Look, we're joined now by Christopher Biggins and, of course, Vineyard Taylor to go through the papers. But before we go through the papers, guys, let's get your reaction to that story. Because I know we had the representative Margarita on from PETA earlier on, and I think she made some very compelling points about the dogs not being able to breed properly. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I understand that, and I generally, of course I agree with you, we don't want any animal suffering, but I think to put all their efforts into something like this, which is a clear administration, they should be focusing on something like animal testing or something, or, you know, the factory farming that we've got in place. Please don't get distracted by the name of a pub. To be honest, people aren't in there to talk about the animals, they're in there to get smashed.
But also, Bulldog is an iconic name.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's a breed of dog which we all love and is very British.
And how long has that breed been around, though? I mean,
forever.
It has, hasn't it?
13th century, apparently, we were told.
So, OK, so it's all... Okay, right, OK, I thought if it was a new breed, I understand that it's got genetic issues, but it's been around since the 1300s.
But that's what the owner was saying. He said this is a Great British symbol in the Bulldog, it's the Great British pub, and it's attacking small businesses.
And also, Mutt is a horrible name. I wouldn't drink in the Mutt.
So shut down the Mutt.
Shut down the old Mutt.
It's not got the same ring to it, has it?
Not sophisticated,
no. Biggins, you've got quite a sad story for us to start, which is that summer is going to make a comeback, but it's going to be a flash in the pan.
I know. I mean, I don't know where anybody was on Saturday. We were down in the country. We drove up from the country, and it absolutely teemed, Dan. I mean, I've never seen rain like it. The roads became like rivers. It was terrifying.
Like biblical rain.
It really was.
Welcome to the north, Biggins.
Did you have that up there?
It's awful. I mean, literally, we have to have a 4x4 because the lanes just get so bombarded with rain all the time. I live in the Ribble Valley, which has got, like, major rivers.
Yes.
And they're always exploding the banks and everything. It's you know, it's a real thing. It's absolutely a washout this summer, and I'm devastated.
I know. I mean, what is going to happen? It's going to get slightly better this week. The temperature's going to go up, but it won't last.
No, so hopes up. I don't even know what to wear.
No.
You know, I don't know what clothes to put on. I mean, it's too hot or too damp, or it's just muggy. It's horrible.
I know. It's not good, and it's just a flash in the pan, apparently.
How long have we got, Biggins?
Not long, darling.
Oh. Well, it's all right for you, darling. You're off to Saint-Tropez.
I know, exactly.
He's off to Saint-Tropez.
He's so civilised, isn't he?
No,
He's so civilised. Solar-powered.
But for the rest of us, we'll get a few days of sunshine.
And that's it. The rain will come again.
Emergency barbecues all
It makes you wonder, you know, where all this global warming is.
Yes, it's not here.
It's not here, is it?
And do you know, I think I saw somewhere it said we are suffering from asymptomatic global warming. And I'm like, what?
That means
ridiculous.
It's not really happening.
No, but we've still got global warming, but it's asymptomatic.
We haven't got the benefits of it.
I mean, it's just rubbish. I mean, honestly, I'm like this about this global warming thing. Honestly, I really am.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, people might want to be making a getaway abroad. Davinia, you got a story in the Daily Mirror. Fascinating. EasyJet kids flight school.
Yeah.
To encourage more girls to get into the industry.
Yeah, I just thought this was really good of EasyJet, actually, because, I mean, you often think of pilots as being male, but they're trying to launch awareness for female pilots as well, which is great. But I just think, what a fabulous thing to do, to, like, get children into a cockpit, to learn, because remember when you were little, you used to be able to go up, but obviously since 9/11, you can't go in there now, so it's like this closed-off area. Children don't see cockpits, and I think it's really good initiative from EasyJet to do this, and just give kids the idea that, you know what, it's possible, I can be a pilot.
So fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
It'd be so exciting.
I'd love to learn how to fly. I said that to my kids. I said, would you get in a plane if I learned how to fly? Because Angelina Jolie can fly. And they said, no, absolutely not.
I want to put this to you. Playing devil's advocate, another initiative to help young girls. Now, there are plenty of them, and there aren't many to help young lads. For example, we don't hear about equality in, I don't know, midwifery.
No.
Or nursing, or teaching. Do we need this to be gender-based, or how about more working-class people who can never afford to get into this sort of occupation whatsoever because of the financial barriers?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we shouldn't have for boys or girls. It's just a job. And it's available to both sexes, or how many other sexes we've got at the moment, I don't know. But I think it should just be available. This is a job opportunity, this is a massive company, and this is possible for anyone who has got, you know, who has studied well at school and got their GCSEs and is on the path to a real incredible career.
Yeah, I'm only saying that.
Would you like to fly? Well, actually fly the plane.
I don't think I would. I've just seen this Idris Elba film.
Me too.
I've heard about this.
Yes, it was really good.
Very, very good.
Yes, very good.
Heard about
Terrifying. I mean, you know, and so for that reason, I wouldn't want to fly because I mean, it's. But of course, the main premise about the film is that it's not flown by the pilot. The pilot's being shot down the back. I wanted to spoil it for anybody, but I mean, I just have.
No,
I suppose.
that's not the twist.
No, that's not the twist. That's
There's
the
a
twist.
huge
But I mean, so the flight is flying on its own. I mean,
Yes,
because
it
that's
really
what
is.
most flights
So you
can
could
do.
actually sit back and have a little glass of Chablis.
Yeah, exactly.
Would that tempt you?
Lovely. That's what I'd be up to.
I think the idea is growing on Biggins.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, the Chablis, very nice. Nice.
Well, maybe you could have some nuts alongside.
Well, I want to know, this is an interesting story, I think, which is in the Star today. This is a handful of pecan nuts a day is enough to lose weight and prevent diabetes, a term from a Texas university says. Now, Texas University, all these universities, mainly I think in America, do they do nothing but think of these strange ideas to confuse us?
Yeah.
I mean, 22 pecan nuts a day.
Very specific, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is very specific. I mean, I just don't... I mean, I wouldn't even bother to try it because I think it's ridiculous.
I like pecan nuts. Yes, pecan. There was a cake named Yes Pecan when Barack Obama won the presidential election in America, which I love that pun. Davinia, you know your foods.
Yep.
You're into nutrition. Is there anything in this, or just another?
Yeah,
salad?
I mean, I think because it's got fats in it, it can actually help with satiety. But I was just explaining to Chris before. I start my day through in a ketogenic state, so I have very fatty coffees. So I've got like
you put like butter in it.
Yeah, butter and MCT oil in my coffee, and that's it. Basically, when you're talking about things like obesity and diabetes, you're talking about addiction to carbohydrates, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get ahead of the craving. So if you, oh gosh, sorry, I dropped that.
Carry on.
If you start your day with fat as a fuel in your brain, you're not going to seek out carbohydrates, which are the addicting things. And when you have carbohydrates, you store it turns into glucose, and it's stored as body fat. But dietary fat you use as energy, you can burn it, it becomes a fuel. So if you feed the brain properly, your body will automatically follow. So I will not crave any brownies or any pecans or anything during the day. So at night I have my carbohydrates.
It sounds counterintuitive. You know, butter in your coffee is good for you.
But it's really good for you. It's got minerals and vitamins, and it stops the brain seeking subconsciously food.
Does it taste good?
It tastes lovely. I've got some. I've got some backstage. You can have some.
I've got one here in my pocket. I'll show
You've
it
got
to
a
you.
set.
You've got lump of butter.
Yeah,
No,
there
it's
we
like
are.
a little powder. It's a bit
That's
like
it.
coffee, mate, but it's good for you. And
You can have that one.
It turns into cream. It's like creamy.
Butter.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
there you
really
go.
nice.
Biggins has got.
I know. I'm all prepared.
He's on it.
But back to the nuts. Is there any gravity in this? Can nuts help you lose weight?
I think not, because I think for me it's a gateway food. As soon as I start eating that, I'm off, and before you know it, I'm in
I want to get on the
McDonald's.
beer if I get on the nuts.
Well, this is it. It's the association. So for me, I find abstinence during the day from certain trigger foods is better, and then by the time nighttime comes, I can have whatever I want. But the eating window is much smaller, and the digestion process is much smaller, and you don't get brain fog.
I think I prefer to have a pecan pie. If you
That is
because
really
that's delicious.
that much pecan, this
I
much
know,
pie.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah?
exactly.
Treacly stuff is.
Sugar. It's just all sugar, isn't
yum.
it? But have that at night and just just close your eating window.
We'll have that, exactly.
Yeah, we're fine over here.
Yeah.
OK, Davina, let's stick to sports, shall we? And a healthy lifestyle, because joining a work, sports or social team can make you happier and more resilient.
Yeah, so I just wanted to go back to a time when I joined a women's netball team.
Yeah.
And it'd not been since school that I'd done that. And it wasn't through work, it was just through a group of friends. And the camaraderie was instantaneous. Like, women that I didn't know, like 40 minutes later, we were hugging and everything. And it was like that real sense of security. And I really think it should be, because obviously since the pandemic and everything, we now understand that social connection, it gives you that nice feeling, that the camaraderie you can't beat. You can't beat it. We tend to forget about it after school.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be sport. It could just be, I don't know, like a pub quiz or something. But the camaraderie is something that we're really missing out on. And I think the support network is just dissolving because of digital.
I absolutely entirely agree. So I play football on Monday nights badly. I'm 53 now, but I still have a pop. But the people that I play with, we're builders, decorators, high-powered lawyers, but all we do, we're all equal on the pitch, and we have a few jars afterwards, and we're all mates. I think team sports is great for the soul.
But that's also why I love my business, because actors, it's great. And the fascinating thing is, you can be with someone for a year, perhaps, in a play or a television series, and then you finish and you have the most wonderful time, and then you never think about them again until you see them again. And then it's back to how it was.
Oh.
It's the most extraordinary business. And it's a business I love, and for that reason.
And is it such a bonding experience, sharing a stage?
I think it really is. I think you bond intensely for those however many weeks or years or whatever you do. I mean, it's just wonderful.
But we're human creatures, aren't we? We're group creatures,
exactly.
we're team players by spirit. And I think we lose a lot there when we exercise on our own or we do things on our own, especially during the pandemic. We were isolated, we were lonely. Team sport, can't beat them.
I think the adrenaline that you experience together is something that bonds you for life. It's like, you know, comrades on a sinking ship. All of a sudden, you're bonded for life.
Yeah.
And I think it's that sort of, like, do or die mentality that competitive sport gives you with your teammates that you can't...
Even if you're terrible at it like me.
I bet you're not. I bet you're not.
I'm right in goal. Move on.
OK, Biggins, let's have a look at a quite shocking story in The Sun. It's about Ian Watkins who's been attacked in jail.
Yes, I know. This is the pop star who I don't really know this story, but he got
profits.
He got what's 37 years or something. No, it can't be 37 years. Anyway, he got a long jail sentence. 35 years, so it's not far off. 35 years in 2013 for 13 offences against children. So he's in prison and he was stabbed in the neck, I think. Now, they say that he was teaching some of the inmates the guitar, and also he had a very young girlfriend who came in. So it's two reasons why. A, people got jealous because they weren't being taught the music by him, and also they were jealous of the girlfriend. I wonder if the fact that he was a paedophile didn't come into it. Because,
bizarre.
You know...
Bizarre, isn't it? I mean, it's like, why the hell is this guy still breathing the same air as anybody? You know, for me, anybody who harms children, they should be the ones being experimented on.
Absolutely.
You know, absolutely. You lose all your human rights. You shouldn't put, like, chimpanzees and everything in these, you know, virus labs that we've got going on. It should be these human beings. They should be tested on because they have taken away lives.
I agree. That's a touch too far. I get what you...
I just cannot picture why this person is breathing.
Yeah, and look, there's a whole conversation around, you know, do these people deserve to go to jail or more than that? But look, that's a big debate for a separate time.
Davinia, let's get back to beating the bulge, shall we? And this is about portion size.
Yeah, so apparently meals have got out of proportion since the 1970s. I mean, the size of our meals is so big, and I think it's probably down to the cost of production. You know, so we've got super-sized meals, but really the super addicting meals. So you end up eating more and more and more because they're like gateway drugs. And it also says to stop eating meat, which I'm just totally against because meat's the most nutrient-dense thing on the planet, and that's what satisfies you.
You say that because that's the only thing you can cook, you were telling me.
That is true. And scrambled eggs.
I'm afraid we have to leave it there. We're simply out of time. We could talk all day. Christopher Biggins, Vineyard Taylor, thank you so much for an excellent overview this morning.
Thank you.
Now here's Rachel Ayres with your Monday forecast.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. The weekend was unsettled for many, but let's have a look at what we've got to start the new working week. After a bit of a cool night, plenty of clear skies around this morning, allowing for early brightness, but cloud will soon bubble up, allowing showers to develop, and these could be heavy, especially across northern and eastern parts of Scotland, where we might also see the odd thunderstorm. Though dry for many across the south with plenty of sunshine, so feeling pretty pleasant here with highs of 22 or even locally 23 in the southeast. Now into this evening, and those showers will slowly start to ease away to allow for some clear spells to develop ahead of this area of cloud and rain pushing in from the southwest, bringing outbreaks of rain and drizzle into the early hours of Tuesday. It'll be a clearer night there across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, where we'll see temperatures dropping quite widely in rural areas into the single figures. Now, throughout the rest of Tuesday, this rain and cloud will erratically make its way eastwards. This will mostly be quite light rain and drizzle, though there could be the odd heavier burst in there, but bringing quite a dull and gloomy day for much of England and Wales. Northern Ireland, Scotland and the far north of
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle. I know, yeah. Please stop. Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. And action.
Sergeant, the big green, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Monday, the 7th of August. Today, the government will push ahead with plans for asylum seekers to arrive on the UK's first migrant barge in the coming days. That's despite critics dubbing the vessel a death trap. We'll be speaking to the Shadow International Secretary to find out what Labour would do to sort out the crisis.
The Home Secretary has announced plans to clamp down on landlords and businesses who take on illegal immigrants. But do we have the police resources to follow through with these proposals?
One council in Sutton is under fire after introducing higher parking charges for people who use cash to pay. Is that fair? We'll be discussing that later.
And of course, here's your all-important Monday weather forecast.
The weekend saw plenty of wet and windy weather, but what does the weather have in store as we start the new week? Join me later for a full forecast with all the details.
Good morning, I'm Martin Daubney.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
And the first group of migrants are expected to be housed on the Bibby Stockholm barge in the coming days, despite opposition from local groups in Portland.
Well, the barge, set to accommodate 500 male asylum seekers, arrived at Portland Harbour last month after being tugged from Falmouth.
Employers and landlords could be fined up to £60,000 for allowing illegal immigrants to work or rent. That's according to plans announced by the Home Secretary today.
Well, let's hear more on this from the Minister for Safeguarding, Sarah Dines. Good morning to you again, Ms Dines. I'm afraid we lost you a little bit earlier, but really good to see you once again. I wanted to talk to you about the front page of the Telegraph this morning, which is Suella Braverman, Home Secretary, apparently considering Ascension Island, which is halfway between Brazil and Africa, in order to house migrants or process migrants. It's being dubbed Plan B for Rwanda. So is this just another pointless announcement, really, that doesn't have any meaningful difference? It won't make any meaningful difference?
Well, as I understand it, it's just not an announcement, it's just speculation. What I can say is that we are thoroughly committed to the Rwandan scheme. We're waiting for the Supreme Court to give its judgment. I'm pleased that the High Court and the Lord Chief Justice found that offshoring and considering these applications was perfectly lawful, and we are confident that we will succeed. So it's not right to speculate about other countries. As a proper government, we are, of course, looking at additional wraparound resources, but we are thoroughly committed to the Rwandan agreement.
Let's turn now to the Bibby Stockholm. We spoke earlier to a resident of a protest group dead against the vessel being in Portland. And it's fair to point out that people from both sides don't want this vessel there. Even the anti-racist and refugees welcome brigade saying it will simply overload the NHS down there. Despite all of these protests, you're pressing on with this barge. Why?
We need to send a message across the world that coming to the United Kingdom illegally doesn't mean you're going to get into a very comfortable hotel. The Bibby Stockholm is just one of a wide range of measures that we're bringing in to move people out of hotels. We're spending over £6 million a night. It's just not acceptable. We need to use this sort of basic but perfectly appropriate accommodation. In relation to local services, a lot of money's gone in. I think £380,000 was given to local authorities to assist in this regard. But in relation to services like the NHS and health, there is going to be a full range of medical services on board that ship. So it's not quite as reported. Anything like this, where large groups of migrants are congregated, is never popular, which is why we have to stop the crisis in the Channel. But we can't do that by having the pull factors of having wonderful hotels being used for illegal migrants who've travelled through several safe countries to get here. Let's not forget that.
I mean, one of the pull factors that we should be discussing this morning is people, illegal migrants, living and working in this country and being able to do so. And that's what we're here to talk about today, the tripling of fines for those supporting illegal migrants with work and a place to live. I mean, for many people watching and listening, they will be very supportive of this action. But of course, the first question is, how can you actually impose this? Do we have the police power in order to actually deal with this? We had an executive on from the cooperative the other day who was saying that they had 1,000 instances of shoplifting in their stores every single day, and the police can't even come out to a shoplifting incident. How do you expect the police to come out and deal with illegal migrants?
Well, it's very important to send the message across the world that the social media adverts are wrong. If you come to the UK, you're not going to automatically be able to get cheap, quiet accommodation, which is unlawful, or you can't work without the proper legal background, the right visa. In relation to enforcement, we have dramatically upped our immigration enforcement visits. It's not just the police, it's the National Crime Agency, it's the borders. We have a lot of joint working together on this. So we do have capability. We've got more officers than before, and we are working hard in this area, and we are going to be able to make sure that those rogue landlords and rogue employers that think they can just rip everybody off by employing illegals, that's got to stop. It's not fair for the good people who are offering accommodation, the good landlords and the good employers. It's just not fair for them to be undercut by what is in fact criminal activity, let's be frank. So I'm very pleased that the Home Secretary is announcing today that we're upping penalties up to £60,000. Some might say it's about time too. We need to stop this criminal activity. It's international organised crime, let's not forget. It's not just one or two people that fancy coming to the UK. This is organised crime and it has to stop. It's cross-nation and it mustn't stop in the UK.
Well, Sarah, GB News performed a sting on a car wash in Aldershot recently, and illegals were working there on the black market, and they were staying at a hotel in Aldershot paid for by you, by the government, by Serco. What would happen in those instances? So the landlord of those illegal residents was the government. Would you fine yourselves?
Well, that's quite shocking. Of course, we need to stamp out this practice. And this is as a result of the huge influx of people that we've had, illegal migrants across the Channel. And you will get people that will try and work the system, which is why we have to enforce larger penalties just to stop this sort of thing. And what we want to do is, of course, get migrants out of hotels, and we won't have this kind of a situation. We need to get migrants processed in perfectly decent but fundamental rudimentary accommodation, not hotels. Why should social media, why should crime advertise across the world? Come to the UK. You can stay in a hotel and you can either rent illegally or you can work illegally. Frankly, it's got to stop, and I'm pleased that this Prime Minister and the Home Secretary are doing something about it.
Sarah, I agree with what you're saying, but I'll put it to you again. The government, Serco, is the biggest landlord of asylum seekers, and if those asylum seekers are proved to be working illegally, and as in your own plan you'll set out to fine them, you'll be fining the landlord, which is the Serco. I'll just repeat my question. Will the government be in a position where you'll be fining yourselves?
Well, effectively, it's subcontracted, isn't it? Serco will have the same legal responsibilities as any landlord across the nation, where they can do a very simple 5-minute check online with the Home Office. These are established principles for landlords. The processes have been established for a while. Landlords can quite easily check, as can employers. So, of course, there has been an influx across the Channel. Nobody doubts that. And where there is a possibility of a mass migration through safe countries, you end up with situations like this. It has to be policed better. And yes, if Serco need to be fined, they need to be fined. They need to do their job as best as possible, along with anybody else that's giving accommodation.
Sarah Dines, really good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for your time. That was Sarah Dines, Parliamentary Under Secretary of State, Minister for Safeguarding, with us on the programme. Do let us know what you have to say about her thoughts there. GB News at GBNews.
And interesting how she said that Serco should be fined if those rules are broken. Let's make sure that's followed up on. OK, let's move on now. We've heard what the government has to say. Now let's hear from the plans to tackle illegal immigration from the Labour Party. Let's see how they'll do that differently.
Yes, let's speak now to Secretary of State for International Trade, Nick Thomas Symonds. Really good to see you this morning. So how would the Labour Party tackle the issue of illegal migration? Would you use barges like the Bibby Stockholm?
Well, good to join you both this morning. And in terms of asylum accommodation, what we need to do is to drive down the backlog so that we can go back to using the long-standing accommodation that we've used for many years, so that we are not in a position where we have to use hotels, barges, bases that are being used, that are frankly costing the taxpayer an extraordinary amount. We hear about $6 million a day being spent on hotels. So what we will be doing is driving down that asylum backlog. We'll do that firstly by using the £140 million the government's currently spent on the Rwanda plan, which has sent more Home Secretaries to Rwanda than people, to actually have a cross-border policing unit to try and bust the model of the people smuggling gangs so that fewer people end up in the English Channel on that dangerous crossing in the first place. Secondly, deal with the actual backlog where there are, for example, agreements in place with safe countries like Albania. Then we should be fast-tracking those people through the system. And third, we need to get more returns agreements in place, because when people are found to have no right to be here, the government just doesn't have the returns agreements in place to be able to return those people to safe countries. So what we need to see is that driving down of the asylum backlog. It's unfair on the people in it, and it's unfair on the British taxpayer as well.
Well, Nick, I'll put it to you that Stephen Kinnock, the Shadow Immigration Minister, yesterday said that the Labour Party would use barges like the Bibby Stockholm because you'd inherit the infrastructure from the Tory party. So if voters are looking for a clear point of difference, especially in places like Portland, which is facing a situation it simply does not want, what's the difference between you and the Conservative Party? You're basically both doing the same thing.
Well, no, Martin, Stephen Kinnock is talking about the situation we'll inherit over which we have no control. If we are privileged enough to come into government next year, we'll inherit the asylum accommodation position that the Conservatives will have put us in over the next 12 months. But we will be moving back to a situation, as I say, where we will be using the long-standing asylum accommodation. It's been used for many, many years before the Conservatives got themselves into a mess where they had to use the bases, this barge and hotels. It's that action that we need. And as I say, it isn't just about the people in the system. It's about this cost of this whole system to the British taxpayer. It's acting in nobody's interest at the moment, which is why ministers need to act in a far better way than they have been over recent years.
The government today are announcing a tripling of fines for those who support illegal migrants, offering them work illegally and allowing them to rent from them as well. They're announcing this crackdown by tripling the fines on this. What would the Labour Party do to tackle the nail salons in this country, the car washes, the building sites that rely on cheap but illegal labour?
Yes, well, we've been arguing for the regime on this to be toughened for some time. The problem is the government has announced the increasing of the fines today, but you have to have attached to that as well proper enforcement action. Take the issue of illegal employment. Since 2016, the number of penalties that the government has issued has gone down by 2/3, gone down. So you have to, alongside the increasing of the fines, actually be doing the work to ensure that people are caught as well. So absolutely, we need a tough system, but the government certainly needs to change the approach that it's been using over the past 7 years, where the number of penalties has simply been going down.
OK, as well as immigration, which is the big story today, you're also here today to talk about a Labour strategy. The Tories are failing on getting people back to work, as 3/4 of the UK still has lower employment than before the pandemic. Perhaps that's because of the way we've changed working, work from home. So how will the Labour Party get people back into work?
Well, firstly, Martin, just to say that we are the only G7 country with a lower rate of employment than before the pandemic. So it's a particular problem for Britain. What would the Labour Party do to deal with this? Well, firstly, I think we need to reform the work capability assessment, because we don't want a situation where people are afraid of going back into work. Let's have a work capability change so that once people are back in work, if it doesn't work out, they can then go back to the previous support they had. Secondly, let's devolve employment support down to local communities. So instead of Whitehall knows best and one-fits-all employment support for the whole country, we can tailor it to the local labour market. And let's as well put specific help in for particular groups, whether it's in terms of the over 50s, those who are on NHS waiting lists. Let's have a proper partnership between local NHS services and employment support services. But let's also tackle the NHS waiting list, millions of people on NHS waiting lists, people who want to get back into work but are just not having the treatment that we need. It's almost as if the Conservatives have given up on getting people back to work.
OK, Nick Thomas-Symonds, Shadow Secretary of State for International Trade, thank you for joining us today on GB News Breakfast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've heard from the government, we've heard from the shadow government this morning. Do let us know what you thought of both of those interviews and what those politicians had to say. Your views matter to us here on GB News. So that's gbnews@gbnews.com. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Coming up, we'll be speaking to the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, to get his thoughts on the government's migration plan. So don't go anywhere.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. The time is 19 minutes past 9 and lots of you have been getting in touch today, so thank you so much for your company.
Yeah, lots of the story on electric cars. Are they spying on us? Are the Chinese spying on us via our EVs? We had Sir Ian Duncan-Smith on the show earlier. Peter seems to be a fan. IDS is the only MP whoever he has a view on anything speaks so much sense. He answered every question put to him this morning with confidence and aplomb. Nice word. Nice use of the word aplomb there, Peter.
Yeah. If he'd have been MP, I'm sure the Conservatives would not be in the dire situation that they now find themselves in. That's what Peter goes on to say. And on sunbeds, just something a little bit lighter. Apparently, this is the front page of The Sun this morning. The Brits and the Germans are rowing over sunbeds this summer. And John says it's not just on the beach, it also happens on cruise ships.
I imagine it's worse there, because it's a contained warfare.
Yeah, apparently fights breaking out all over Europe over sunbeds this summer. Who knew? Do keep them coming in, gbviews at gbnews.com.
OK, we've been hearing from the government and Labour on their plans to tackle migration. But joining us for more analysis is now the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor. Good morning to you, David. Well, what a calamity we find ourselves in. We've been reporting from Portland. The first inmates are due there this week, if not today. Nobody wants that. What's your take on the Bibby Stockholm situation before we move on to the government's wider plans to crack down on illegal workers come out today?
Well, I'm speaking to you 10 miles from Portland, actually. We don't get too much of the trouble here. But I feel sorry for the people of Portland who've had this boat dumped upon them. Because, of course, what's going to happen is that these asylum seekers, and young men in the main, none of them, quite a lot of them, know better than they should be. And they're going to be allowed during the hours of daylight to roam around the local community. I think that is a bad idea. But what it evidences is the total failure on the part of the government, and I didn't find the contribution from the opposition generated much light on this matter. It is dealing with why are these people here? You see, it's a corruption of the whole idea behind migrants and the whole idea behind people being able to seek asylum, that you can travel through, and the minister did make this point, to be fair to her, half a dozen perfectly safe countries, and you end up in the UK. So what is it about the UK that makes us so attractive? Is it that we give them money when others don't? Is it that until lately anyway, and there's a limited number of boats we can stick offshore, so they'll still be staying in hotels, some of them 4-star hotels, and we will end up with a situation where people come on a self-selecting basis because there are ways in which people with skills and qualifications can come into this country. This lot don't care about this. They turn up on a beach and they're greeted by lots of lawyers who take money off the public purse. Why are they allowed to do that? And judges. What does an English judge really have to do with why somebody, I don't know, from Albania wants to settle in this country? He wouldn't normally have any authority over that, only gets authority over that because someone has chosen to turn up on a beach. And what the government has failed to do, singularly failed to do, is to remove the courts from this. Once you get the lawyers involved, once you get the judges involved, these people are going to be here for months and months and months. And good luck to the people of Portland. The only thing I would say about Portland, and those talking about the SS Bibby, Portland was, of course, where a lot of D-Day was launched from. If it was good enough for our soldiers, it's good enough for this wretched lot, isn't it, to live in Portland? But whether they should be allowed to live in Portland is quite another matter.
Well, David Mellor, it's always good to see you in the morning. Lovely blue skies behind you there in Dorset, so go and enjoy your lovely second home in the sunshine there. It's nice to see the sunshine, isn't it?
Well, that's it now from us on Breakfast, but we'll be back from 6 a.m. tomorrow. Up next, it's Britain's Newsroom, and here's Bev Turner. Bev, what's on the menu?
Well, what's on the menu is you, Mark, because Andrew Pierce was meant to be back today. Unfortunately, Andrew is ill. Get well, Andrew, if you are watching at home. So you are very kindly doing a double shift, and you're going to see me through until midday today.
My pleasure.
Well, apparently the first people will be arriving at the Bibby Stockholm while we're on the telly. They're being given goodie bags, a phone line to call, and frankly, a very warm welcome. We're going to be discussing whether that is what we want.
Well, it's going to be a packed show. You're going to need your coffee.
Yep.
And you're going to need a weather forecast. That's coming up next for you.
Thank you.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. The weekend was unsettled for many, but let's have a look at what we've got to start the new working week. After a bit of a cool night, plenty of clear skies around this morning, allowing for early brightness, but cloud will soon bubble up, allowing showers to develop, and these could be heavy, especially across northern and eastern parts of Scotland, where we might also see the odd thunderstorm. Though dry for many across the south with plenty of sunshine, so feeling pretty pleasant here with highs of 22 or even locally 23 in the southeast. Now into this evening, and those showers will slowly start to ease away to allow for some clear spells to develop ahead of this area of cloud and rain pushing in from the southwest, bringing outbreaks of rain and drizzle into the early hours of Tuesday. It'll be a clearer night there across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, where we'll see temperatures dropping quite widely in rural areas into the single figures. Now, throughout the rest of Tuesday, this rain and cloud will erratically make its way eastwards. This will mostly be quite light rain and drizzle, though there could be the odd heavier burst in there, but bringing quite a dull and gloomy day for much of England and Wales. Northern Ireland, Scotland and the far north of England remaining dry and sunny, so feeling pleasant here. Breezy along English Channel coasts, but still seeing highs of 22.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up? Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point, but bomb. And action.
Read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stuck.